The Space Where Angels Fall, A Story of Sacred Longing. Chapter 1. The Nearness. He was already there when she realized she was alone. The awareness came to her slowly, like heat spreading beneath skin, uninvited, unmistakable. Not a sound, not a shadow, just the certainty that the space behind her was no longer empty. Eliza Matthews stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in warm water gone cloudy with soap, staring out at the backyard she rarely used anymore. The oak tree at the fence line had dropped its last leaves weeks ago, bare branches clawing at the pale winter sky. Everything looked the way it always did, still, predictable, safe, except her breath had changed. She turned off the faucet, listening to the abrupt silence settle too neatly around her. Her heart beat faster than it should have for a woman standing alone in her own house at 7 in the evening. "Hello?" she said, and felt foolish the moment the word left her mouth. The house did not answer. Eliza dried her hands carefully, the way she did everything now, deliberately, without haste. She had learned that moving too quickly invited memory, and memory had sharp edges. 12 years of marriage did not vanish cleanly, no matter how amicable the paperwork claimed the ending had been. She folded the dish towel over the counter, straightened the chair Mark used to sit in, even though no one had occupied it in over a year. Some habits refused to die. The nearness remained. It was not threatening. That was the strangest part. If anything, it felt attentive, like standing at the front of a church before the service began, when the sanctuary still held its breath. "Get a grip," she murmured, pressing her palm flat against the cool countertop. She had prayed for this feeling once, years ago, when her marriage had begun to crack under the weight of unspoken disappointment. Back then, she had begged God to feel closer, to be present, to fill the space where love was thinning. Now the thought unsettled her. Eliza crossed the kitchen and switched on the lamp near the sofa. Light pooled across the worn rug and the small stack of books beside the chair where she read her Bible each morning. Habit again. Routine had become her armor. She reached for her cardigan, shrugging it on when she felt it, a shift in the air, subtle but undeniable. The pressure behind her changed, like someone stepping closer without touching. Her pulse jumped. "This is ridiculous," she whispered. "You're tired, that's all." She had been saying that to herself for months, tired from work, from church committees and polite conversations and the quiet shame of being divorced in a congregation that didn't know what to do with her anymore. No one said it outright, but she felt the recalibration, the subtle slide from married woman to woman whose marriage failed. Eliza closed her eyes and exhaled. She needed prayer, not imagination. She reached for her Bible. The leather cover was warm beneath her fingers, as if it had been sitting in the sun. She frowned, then opened it anyway, letting it fall where it would. A habit she had never quite broken. The verse stared up at her, uncomfortably precise. "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." Her breath caught. Hebrews 13:2. She stared at the words until the letters blurred. A humorless laugh escaped her throat. "That's not funny," she said aloud, though she wasn't sure who she was addressing. The presence behind her deepened, not heavier, clearer, as if whatever lingered there had been waiting for her attention, not demanding it. Eliza turned slowly. He stood near the doorway to the hall where the light thinned into shadow. Not glowing, not winged, not anything like the paintings in the church foyer or the stained glass above the baptistry. He looked human, tall, but not imposing. Dark hair brushed his collar, eyes an impossible shade of gray that seemed to hold depth rather than color. He wore simple clothing, nothing that marked him as ancient or otherworldly, nothing that explained how he had entered her locked house without a sound. His gaze met hers, steady and searching, and something in her chest loosened painfully, like a knot she hadn't realized she was carrying. "Eliza," he said. The sound of her name on his lips undid her. She swayed, just slightly, and before she could stop herself, she reached out, grasping the back of the chair. The world tilted, then steadied. "You shouldn't be afraid," he said, and his voice was quiet, reverent, as though fear were a sacred thing not to be dismissed lightly. "Who are you?" she managed. He hesitated. The pause felt weighted, intentional. "I am sent," he said finally. Her laugh came sharp and breathless. "Sent by who?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he took a single step closer, stopping well short of touching her, close enough that she could see the faint crease between his brows, the careful restraint in the way he held himself. "You already know," he said. Eliza's throat tightened. "No," she said too quickly. "I don't." He studied her as if she were something fragile, something that might fracture if named too directly. "You have been asking for a long time," he said, not aloud, but faithfully. Anger flared, sudden and unwelcome. "I stopped asking," she snapped, "when it became clear there wasn't going to be an answer." The memory rose unbidden, kneeling beside her bed, fingers twisted in the sheets while Mark slept facing the wall, praying not for rescue, just for relief, for something to soften the distance between them. The man, no, the being, did not flinch. "Answers are not always given when they are requested," he said. "Sometimes they arrive when they are needed." She folded her arms, hugging herself. "You don't get to say that. You don't know what I've needed." His gaze softened. "I do." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they landed like truth. "How?" she whispered. "I have watched," he said. The room seemed to contract around them. Eliza became acutely aware of her body, of the way her skin warmed beneath his attention, of the absurdity of caring whether her hair was neat or her cardigan buttoned properly. "Watched me?" she asked. He nodded once. "For some time?" Her breath shuddered. "That's not comforting." "No," he agreed. "It is not meant to be." She swallowed. "Then why are you here?" He looked down, just briefly, as though the answer carried weight he did not take lightly. When his eyes lifted to hers again, they held something like sorrow. "You have reached a point of decision?" he said. A hollow laugh escaped her. "I got divorced. That's not exactly new." "This decision is quieter," he said, "and far more dangerous." Eliza shook her head. "I don't understand." "I know," he said gently. Silence stretched between them, thick with things unsaid. The lamp hummed softly. Outside, the wind stirred the bare branches of the oak. She thought of the verse again, entertained angels unawares. The idea felt laughable, until it didn't. "If you're an angel," she said slowly, "why do you look like that?" "Like what?" "Like a man." Something unreadable passed across his face. "Because that is how you see." Her chest tightened. "And what do you see?" He hesitated again, longer this time. The restraint in him seemed to strain, as if held by a thread. "A woman who has learned to be obedient at great cost," he said, "and who is dangerously close to believing she was meant to live untouched." The words struck deeper than she was prepared for. Tears burned behind her eyes, unwelcome and sudden. "That's not fair," she whispered. "No," he said. "It is not." She took a step toward him without thinking, drawn by something she did not have language for. The space between them closed until she could feel the heat of him, the awareness crackling like static beneath her skin. "Why does this feel—" She faltered, unable to finish. He inhaled sharply, as though the closeness affected him too. "Because you are human," he said, "and I am nearer than I should be." Her heart hammered. "Then move." He didn't. "Eliza," he said, and her name sounded like prayer. "There are boundaries." "I didn't invite you here," she said, her voice barely steady. "No," he agreed. "You did not." Her gaze dropped to his hands, held carefully at his sides, fingers curled as if in restraint. She felt an ache low in her body that startled her with its intensity. "I don't want this," she said, even as the lie rang hollow. His jaw tightened. "Neither do I." The confession hung between them, electric. She reached out before she could stop herself, her fingers brushing his wrist, just enough to feel warmth, solidity, realness. The moment her skin met his, the room seemed to inhale. He stiffened, breath catching, eyes darkening as something unguarded flashed across his face, longing, sharp and unmistakable. "Eliza," he said, a warning threaded through her name. Her fingers trembled against his pulse. And then the world shifted. Chapter 2. The Watcher. He didn't touch her back, yet the air between their bodies felt like a hand. Eliza's fingers were still on his wrist when the room lurched, as if the house had briefly forgotten where it was anchored. The lamp's glow wavered. The edges of the furniture softened, then snapped into sharpness again. Her stomach dropped the way it did on the first steep dip of a roller coaster, but her feet never left the rug. She yanked her hand away more from instinct than choice. The moment contact broke, the pressure eased, just a fraction, like a tightened string released one careful notch. "What was that?" she whispered. His eyes stayed on the space where her fingers had been, his expression taut with restraint. He swallowed once, as if steadying himself against something he hadn't expected to feel. "A consequence," he said quietly. Eliza's pulse hammered in her throat. "Of me touching you?" His gaze lifted to hers. In the gray of his eyes, she saw something like discomfort. No, not discomfort. Hunger, contained. It unnerved her because it mirrored her own body too closely. "Yes," he said, "and of me. Allowing it." A shiver ran through her, not from fear, not entirely. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how thin her cardigan felt, how warm the room had become. "You're saying I—" She stopped. The word caused sticking in her mouth like an accusation. "I am saying we are not meant to be careless," he replied. The gentleness in his tone made the warning sharper, not softer. Eliza dragged in a breath. "Okay," she said, the words sounding steadier than she felt. "Then start over. Who are you? How are you here? And why—" Her voice caught, betraying her. "Why do you feel like this?" His eyes flicked to her lips just once. It was a glance so fast she could have told herself she imagined it. Except her body responded as if it had been a slow, deliberate touch. He looked away. "I have no name you can speak," he said. "That's convenient." He gave her the faintest hint of a smile, not humor, but acknowledgement. "It is not meant to be convenient." Eliza tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "Then what do I call you?" He was silent long enough that she felt the quiet stretch into something intimate. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt intentional, like he was deciding what he could give her without unraveling whatever boundary held them in place. "At times," he said finally, "I have been called Watcher." Eliza blinked. "That's not a name." "It is what I am," he said simply. "Watching me," she murmured, bitterness rising again. "That sounds invasive." "It is not for pleasure," he said, and something in his voice tightened, like the word pleasure carried a weight he refused to touch. Her cheeks warmed. "I didn't say—" "I know what you did not say," he replied. His gaze returned to her face, uncomfortably direct. "You have learned to guard your words because you believe them dangerous." Eliza's throat tightened. "Are they not?" "Words create worlds," he said, and for a moment the room felt old, like his voice had lived longer than her walls. "You know this when you pray." She looked away, unsettled by how easily he spoke into parts of her she rarely admitted existed. A silence settled again, but this time it carried a question she couldn't avoid. She cleared her throat. If you're truly an angel," she began, the word tasting strange in her mouth, "why would you be sent to watch me?" He hesitated. "Because you are at a threshold." "You said that." "You are used to thresholds," he continued, ignoring her attempt at humor. "You have stood at many: marriage, vows, betrayal, departure." Her breath caught on the word betrayal. She stiffened. "You don't get to—" His eyes softened, but his voice remained unwavering. "You did not tell the whole truth about your divorce." Eliza went still. A cold rush swept through her, then heat, as if her body couldn't decide whether to flee or fight. "I told the truth," she said through clenched teeth. "We grew apart. We stopped trying. We signed papers like adults. We moved on." Watcher's gaze remained fixed on her, steady as stone. "Those are facts," he said, "not truth." Eliza's hands curled into fists at her sides. "What do you want from me?" He took a slow breath, and for the first time she saw something like difficulty in him, like he was lifting a weight she could not see. "I do not want," he said, the emphasis strange. "I am not here to take." Her laugh came out too sharp. "Then why does it feel like you're pulling at me?" His eyes darkened, and she hated how her body responded to that darkness like it was sunlight. "Because you feel the nearness," he said, "and you have been starved of it." Eliza stared at him. Her chest ached as if his words had touched something tender. "I have a church," she said too quickly. "Friends, I'm not—" "Touched," he finished softly. The word landed like a confession. Eliza swallowed hard. The house felt too quiet, like it was listening. She turned away, pacing a few steps toward the window, putting distance between them the way she'd learned to do with anything that threatened to become real. Outside, the oak tree's branches scraped the sky in thin black lines. "I'm not doing this," she whispered. Behind her, Watcher didn't move. His stillness was a kind of discipline. "Eliza," he said, and her name sounded like it did in scripture readings, like it belonged to someone older, someone more certain. "You have been asking for a sign." "I stopped asking," she muttered. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. Eliza pressed her fingertips to the window glass. It was cold, grounding. "What kind of sign shows up in a woman's living room and tells her he's been watching her?" she demanded, turning back. "Do you know how insane this sounds?" Watcher's gaze remained calm. "You are not insane." "That's reassuring," she snapped. "I am not here to frighten you," he said. "I am here to keep you from stepping into darkness without seeing it." Eliza's pulse quickened again. "What darkness?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward her Bible, still open on the chair where she'd dropped it. The verse stared up like it knew more than she did. "Hospitality," he said quietly. Eliza frowned. "What?" He lifted his gaze to her face. "You read the verse?" "Hebrews," she said, feeling foolish saying it aloud, as if she were admitting she believed. "It says people entertain angels unaware." "Yes." Eliza's mouth went dry. "Are you saying I'm supposed to entertain you?" Watcher's expression did something subtle, tightened at the corners, as if the word was too close to something else. "No," he said. "Not in the way you mean." Her cheeks warmed anyway. "I don't know what I mean." "You do," he replied, and his voice lowered just slightly. "You are simply afraid to name it." Eliza's breath caught. The space between them felt suddenly too small. She forced herself to look away. "This is wrong," she whispered. Watcher didn't move, but his presence filled the room like a hymn held on one long note. "What is wrong?" "Everything," she said, gesturing helplessly. "You, me, the way my body is—" She stopped, throat tightening. "Responding." The word responding felt indecent in her mouth. Watcher's gaze did not flicker. "Your body is not your enemy," he said. Eliza let out a shaky breath. "My body has gotten me into trouble before." The moment she said it, she regretted it. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was too revealing. Watcher's eyes softened again, painfully gentle. "You are not a cautionary tale," he said. Something inside her cracked at that. She felt tears sting her eyes, furious with herself for being moved by a stranger, by a being, by a voice that spoke like it had been listening to her heart all along. "I'm divorced," she said, as if the word were a shield. "Do you understand what that means in my world?" Watcher's gaze remained steady. "It means you carry a wound that others keep pressing." Eliza nodded once, swallowing hard. "It means I'm marked." "You are marked," he agreed, "but not in the way you believe." She looked at him then, really looked. The room's light caught the lines of his face, the calm strength in his posture, the restraint held so tightly it felt like an iron gate. "Then why do you feel like a temptation?" she whispered. For the first time, Watcher's composure cracked, his breath caught, barely audible. He looked away, as if afraid of what his eyes might reveal if he kept them on her. "I am not sent to tempt you," he said, voice low. "But you do," she insisted, stepping closer before she could stop herself. "You stand there and look at me like you can see through me, like you can see what I want." Watcher's jaw tightened. "I can." Eliza stopped, heart pounding. "And?" Silence. He lifted his eyes to hers slowly, like a man choosing to walk into fire. "And I am not meant to want anything," he said. The words hit her like a wave. Eliza's throat went tight. "But you do," she whispered, because she could feel it. Feel the containment in him, the way the air changed when she moved, the way the room itself seemed to tense around his restraint. Watcher didn't deny it. That was answer enough. Her mind spun, grasping for the safety of scripture, for doctrine, for a rule book big enough to hold whatever was happening. She turned back to the chair and the open Bible, as if the words might anchor her. Her eyes caught another verse, one she hadn't opened to, one she knew by memory, because it had haunted her through the divorce. "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it?" Jeremiah 17:9. Her chest tightened. "My heart lies," she said aloud, voice small. Watcher stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that she could feel his warmth at her back, the way her skin prickled as if it recognized him. "Your heart longs," he corrected softly. "Those are not the same." Eliza closed her eyes. The nearness behind her made her breath unsteady. She could smell him, clean, like rain and cedar and something she couldn't name, not cologne, not soap, something alive. She turned before she thought, and suddenly he was right there, too close. Her breath brushed his chest. The heat of him enveloped her like a cloak. Watcher's hands stayed at his sides, fingers flexed in restraint. "Eliza," he said, and her name was a warning and a plea. Her body leaned toward him anyway, drawn by an ache she could not reason away. "What are you?" she whispered, staring at his mouth. It looked human. It looked like it would feel human. His eyes darkened. "A boundary," he said hoarsely. That made her laugh, breathless and broken. "You're failing at it." Watcher's gaze flicked up to hers, and for a second she saw something wild in him, something he held back with everything he was. "I am holding," he said, voice tight. "You do not understand what it costs." Eliza's throat tightened. "Then tell me." Watcher swallowed. "If I cross the line I am set upon," he said, each word measured, as if speaking them made them more dangerous, "I do not return to what I was." Her pulse thudded. "You'd fall." His eyes held hers. "Yes." The word made her stomach twist. The word fall carried 1,000 sermons and warnings and pictures of ruin, and yet her body responded to it like a spark. "Eliza," he said again, softer now. "You must choose your next step with open eyes." She stared at him, breath shallow. "You keep saying I'm at a threshold." "You are," he replied. "What threshold?" Watcher's gaze dropped to her hands, then lifted back to her face. "The one between being seen and being taken," he said quietly. "Between longing and surrender." Eliza's mouth went dry. She wanted to step back. She should have. She could feel the precipice under her feet, the edge of something that would not be undone once crossed, but the nearness was unbearable, not because it was frightening, Because it was kind, because it was careful, because it felt like being held without being touched. "I don't trust myself," she whispered. Watcher's eyes softened. "Then trust the one who sees you," he said. She let out a bitter laugh. "I trusted him when I married Mark." Watcher didn't flinch. "And he saw you then," he said. "He sees you now." Eliza's eyes burned again. She lifted her chin, defiant in the face of her own trembling. "If God sees me," she whispered, "then why did he send you?" Watcher's gaze held hers for a long, devastating beat. "Because you are about to ask for something," he said softly, "and heaven wants you to understand what you are asking." Eliza's breath caught. "What am I asking?" Watcher's voice dropped, almost a whisper. "To be touched," he said, "and not survive unchanged." Her body shivered. Her mind screamed, "No." Her heart whispered, "Yes." She swallowed hard. "I didn't ask you to come," she said again, weaker this time. "No," he replied, "but you have been opening the door for a long time." Eliza stared at him, shaking her head. "I don't know what you mean." Watcher lifted his gaze toward her Bible again. The page rustled without any wind, as if the book itself were turning its own leaves. Eliza froze, watching in stunned silence as the paper flipped once, twice, then stopped. Her eyes dropped to the verse now exposed. "Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you." James 4:8. Her breath left her in a rush. Watcher's voice was close, reverent. "Nearness is not always comfort," he murmured. "Sometimes it is a test." Eliza's hands trembled at her sides. "This isn't what that verse means," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "It means what it says," Watcher replied, and for a moment his restraint felt like something holy. "God draws near. The question is whether you can bear it." Eliza's throat tightened. "And can you?" she demanded, looking at him. Watcher's jaw flexed. His eyes darkened again, and the room seemed to tighten around them. "I was not made to bear this," he said, voice rough. And yet what?" Eliza whispered. Watcher's gaze dropped to her mouth again, slower this time, deliberate enough that her breath caught. His hands remained at his sides, but his whole body leaned toward her by the smallest fraction, as if pulled by gravity he could not defy. "And yet I am here," he finished. Eliza felt the edge of herself, every nerve awake. She could taste the moment, the choice, the line. "Tell me your rule," she whispered. Watcher's eyes narrowed slightly. "My rule?" "The boundary," Eliza said. "Tell me exactly where it is." Watcher's breath hitched. "Do not ask that." "Why?" "Because if you ask," he said, voice low, "and I answer, you will not be able to pretend you didn't know what you were doing." Eliza stared at him, heart pounding. Her mouth was dry. Her skin felt too tight around her bones. She took one step closer. Watcher did not move away. Her voice came out like confession. "Then tell me anyway." Watcher's eyes closed for a brief moment, as if in prayer or surrender. When he opened them, they were fierce with restraint. "The boundary," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "is touch with intent." Eliza's breath caught. "Intent," she repeated, the words sliding through her like heat. Watcher nodded once. "Accidental contact is manageable," he said. "A brush of skin, a passing steadiness." Eliza's throat tightened. "And intentional?" Watcher's gaze held hers. "Intentional touch invites consequence," he said softly. "Not just for you." Eliza's heart hammered. "For you!" Watcher's lips parted, then closed again, as if he could not trust his own words. "Yes." Eliza's pulse thudded hard in her ears. She could barely breathe. "Show me," she whispered. Watcher's eyes widened a fraction. "Eliza." "Show me what you mean," she insisted, voice trembling. "Show me the line." His jaw tightened, his hands flexed at his sides, fingers curling and uncurling as if he were fighting his own nature. "Eliza," he said again, and this time her name sounded like a final warning. She lifted her hand slowly, giving him every chance to stop her, every chance to step back, every chance to refuse. Watcher did not move. Her fingers hovered just above his forearm, so close she could feel the warmth rising from his skin. And in that suspended moment, Eliza realized the truth. She was not reaching for a stranger. She was reaching for being seen. Her fingertips made contact. Not a brush, not an accident. A deliberate, intentional touch. The room inhaled, hard. The lamp flickered violently. The air thickened, charged with a pressure that felt like thunder pressing down on the roof. Eliza's breath caught as the space around them seemed to bend, the walls stretching in a way that made her dizzy. Watcher's eyes went dark, depthless, ancient, and suddenly not human at all. "Eliza," he whispered, voice breaking. She tried to pull her hand away, but her fingers felt rooted, as if the touch had sealed itself. Then a sound cut through the house, sharp, metallic, impossible, not a knock, a summons. It rang from the hallway like a blade struck against stone, vibrating in the bones of the house. Watcher went utterly still, his face emptied of everything but dread. "They know," he said. Eliza's blood ran cold. Who knows? Watcher's gaze snapped to the dark hallway, where the air had begun to ripple like heat over asphalt. "Heaven!" he whispered, "and they are here." The hallway shadow shifted. A figure stepped into the edge of lamplight, and the temperature dropped so fast Eliza's breath turned white. Watcher's voice was low and urgent, something like fear threading through it for the first time. "Do not speak," he said. "Whatever happens next, do not speak your desire aloud." Eliza's heart pounded. Her hand finally broke free from his arm, but the sensation lingered, burning like a mark. The figure in the hall lifted its head, and Eliza understood, without a word, that it had come to measure the distance between her longing and her obedience. It spoke her name anyway. "Eliza Matthews," the voice said, not harsh, not loud, simply absolute. "Step away." Eliza couldn't move. Watcher shifted just slightly, placing himself between her and the figure. "No," Watcher said quietly. The air snapped, like a cord pulled too tight. The figure's gaze sharpened on him. "You have violated your boundary," it said. "You will come now." Watcher's breath hitched, his shoulders squared. Eliza's voice trembled despite his warning. "Wait!" Watcher turned his head just enough to look at her, eyes fierce with command. "Do not," he mouthed. But it was too late. The figure's attention slid to Eliza like a blade. "And you," it said, voice calm as judgment, "will choose." Eliza's throat tightened. "Choose what?" The figure's eyes, too bright, too empty, held her pinned. "Speak," it said, "and bind him to your longing." Watcher's face went white. Eliza's lungs locked. Her mind reeled. The figure waited, patient as consequence. Watcher's voice broke, raw. "Eliza," he whispered, "if you say it, I fall." Eliza stared at him, shaking, the word burning on her tongue, her desire, her need, the truth she'd never dared name. And behind her ribs, her heart answered before her faith could. She opened her mouth. Chapter 3. Unaccustomed Hunger. She did not speak. The word hovered on her tongue, hot, treacherous, but Eliza clamped her mouth shut, pressing her lips together so hard her jaw ached. The silence felt louder than any confession could have been. The figure in the hallway watched her with infinite patience. Watcher stood between them, unmoving, his back straight, his presence a barrier she hadn't asked for, but suddenly could not imagine losing. His shoulders were tense, as if holding up more than his own weight. "Wise," the other voice said at last. "Not approval, assessment. You have restraint." Eliza's knees trembled. She slid one hand against the edge of the sofa to steady herself, keeping her eyes fixed on Watcher's back. She did not want to look at the other being again, did not want to see whatever measure it used to decide the fate of things. The figure's gaze shifted to Watcher. "You," it said, and there was something like disappointment in the word. "You know the cost." Watcher's voice was steady, but Eliza heard the strain beneath it. "I do." "And yet you allowed proximity." Watcher did not deny it. The silence thickened. Eliza's chest ached with the effort of breathing quietly, of not giving herself away with some involuntary sound. The air felt colder now, thinner, as if warmth itself had retreated in deference to whatever judgment lingered in the hall. "Withdraw," the figure said. Watcher's head inclined a fraction. "I will." Eliza's heart dropped. Withdraw? From the room? From her? From everything? The thought landed like a physical blow, sharp and breath-stealing. She pressed her hand harder against the sofa, nails biting into fabric, grounding herself in the only thing that felt solid. The figure's gaze slid back to her. "This is mercy," it said. "You will understand in time." Before Eliza could respond, before she could even form a thought sharp enough to become words, the air shifted again. Not violently this time, precisely. The pressure eased, the cold receded, the hallway dimmed, shadows folding back into themselves like curtains drawn after a performance. The figure stepped backward, retreating into darkness without turning away, its attention never leaving Watcher. "Remember," it said, voice fading, "longing invites gravity." Then it was gone. The house exhaled. Eliza sagged, breath rushing from her lungs in a shaky rush. The lamp steadied. The walls felt solid again. Ordinary. Too ordinary to have just held heaven's attention. Watcher remained still for a long moment, as if listening for echoes only he could hear. When he finally turned, his face was drawn tight with something like pain. "You should sit," he said quietly. She nodded, unable to trust her legs. She sank onto the sofa, cardigan slipping from her shoulder. She barely noticed. Her skin still buzzed where she'd touched him, where the moment had almost tipped into something irreversible. Watcher stayed where he was, across the room, putting deliberate distance between them. The restraint in that choice stung more than the nearness had. "That," Eliza tried, then stopped, swallowing. "That thing. It knew my name." "Yes." Her hands curled in her lap. "It wanted me to speak." "Yes." "And if I had—" Watcher's jaw tightened. "Then I would not be standing here." A tremor ran through her. "You would have fallen." "Yes." The word sounded heavier now. More real. Eliza looked down at her hands, at the faint white crescents where her nails had pressed into her skin. She had wanted, no, needed, to say it. The wanting had risen up from somewhere deep and starved, bypassing her better judgment entirely. "I didn't even know what I was going to say," she whispered. "But I know it wouldn't have been appropriate." Watcher's gaze softened. It would have been true. That was worse. Eliza laughed weakly, scrubbing at her eyes with the heel of her hand. "This is absurd," she said. "I'm a middle-aged woman sitting in my living room being told my feelings could cause an angel to fall." Watcher didn't smile. "Your feelings did not cause this," he said. "Your longing revealed it." She looked up at him, startled. "There's a difference?" "Yes," he said. "Longing persists even when denied. It shapes choice." Eliza's throat tightened. "Then what am I supposed to do with it?" Watcher hesitated. The pause felt careful, weighted. "You are meant to notice it," he said. "Not indulge it." Her laugh came sharp and brittle. "That's easy for you to say." His gaze flickered, something like wryness passing through it. "It is not." She studied him, really studied him now, seeing the tension in his posture, the deliberate stillness of his hands. The restraint wasn't only for her sake, it was a discipline he bore constantly. "You said you were watching me," she said. How long? Longer than you are comfortable knowing, he replied gently. She huffed out a breath. That's ominous. It is meant to be honest. Eliza leaned back against the sofa, exhaustion crashing over her now that the immediate danger had passed. So what happens now? She asked. Do you disappear? Do I wake up tomorrow convinced I hallucinated all of this? Watcher shook his head. No. Her chest tightened. You're staying. For a time, he said. At a distance. She nodded slowly. Distance. The word tasted like deprivation. And you're still watching. Yes. The admission stirred something uncomfortable in her chest, not fear, but awareness. Being seen was unsettling when you had grown used to being overlooked. Worse when you suspected the one seeing you could not look away. I don't like the way my body reacts to you, she said quietly. Watcher's eyes darkened, then softened. Nor do I. That startled a laugh out of her. That's not reassuring. It is honest, he replied. Eliza shifted on the sofa, pulling the cardigan more securely around herself. I've spent years teaching myself not to want, she said. Not like that. Not with my body. Not with hope. Watcher's gaze held hers, steady and unflinching. And yet your body remembers. She closed her eyes, the truth of it aching. Desire had returned like a stranger knocking at the door long after she'd boarded up the windows. When Mark left, she said, the name tasting old and dull, I prayed for the wanting to go away. I thought if I could just be faithful enough, obedient enough, it would. Watcher's voice was quiet. Did it? No, she admitted. It just went quiet, like it was waiting. The air between them hummed softly, charged not with danger now, but with recognition. Longing is not a failure of faith, Watcher said. It is evidence of being alive. Eliza opened her eyes. That's not what I was taught. I know, he said. She looked at him sharply. You know a lot about what I was taught. I have listened, he replied. The intimacy of that unsettled her more than any physical closeness could have. She shifted again, restless. What if I can't do this? She asked. What if I don't trust myself? Watcher's gaze dropped, then lifted again, resolve hardening in it. Then you will not be left alone with it. Her heart skipped. You'll help me? He nodded once. Within my bounds. Eliza swallowed. And what are those exactly? Watcher's mouth tightened slightly. No intentional touch, he said. No indulgence of fantasy. No words spoken that invite dissent. She winced. You make it sound so clinical. It is a safeguard, he replied. For you, she said. For both of us. She studied him for a long moment. And what about the things I don't control? She asked. Dreams, thoughts, reactions. Watcher's gaze softened again. Those are not violations, he said. They are terrain. Terrain, she repeated faintly. Yes, he said, and terrain must be crossed carefully. Eliza let out a slow breath. I don't remember the last time someone spoke to me like this. Like what? Like my desire mattered, she said. Not just as a sin to be managed. Watcher's eyes held hers. It matters because it tells the truth about you. Her chest tightened. She looked away, blinking rapidly. I need something solid, she said. Something that isn't just you and me standing in a room. Watcher nodded. Scripture, he said. She gave a short, humorless laugh. Of course. He stepped, not closer, but to the chair where her Bible lay open. He didn't touch it. He didn't need to. Read, he said. Eliza followed his gaze, her eyes falling on the page. The verse had shifted again without her noticing, as if the book itself insisted on being heard. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. Psalm 42, vers 1. Her breath caught. That's about God, she said quickly. Not this. Watcher's voice was gentle. Yes, he agreed. And you have learned to starve everything else in his name. She stiffened. I don't. You do, he said quietly. You mistake absence for holiness. The words stung because they rang true. Eliza hugged her arms around herself. Then what am I supposed to do? She asked again, more softly this time. Let myself want and just trust it won't destroy me? Watcher looked at her for a long moment, something grave in his expression. No, he said. You are meant to let yourself feel and then choose. She frowned. That sounds like a setup. It is, he replied. Faith always is. She let out a shaky laugh. You're terrible at comfort. And you are terrible at surrender, he countered gently. She met his gaze, startled by the accuracy. I survived divorce by controlling everything I could, she said. If I don't control this, what happens? Watcher's voice dropped. You might be changed. The word sent a thrill through her. She did not want to examine too closely. Silence stretched between them again, quieter now, but no less charged. Eliza shifted, acutely aware of the distance between them and of how keenly she felt it. You said you'd withdraw, she said at last. Does that mean you're leaving tonight? Watcher nodded. I will not remain here after this. Her chest tightened unexpectedly. Where will you go? Near, he said, but not seen. She swallowed. And tomorrow? I will return, he said, at a safer remove. She nodded slowly, trying not to let the disappointment show. Watcher turned toward the hallway, then paused, as if something held him in place. He looked back at her, eyes searching. Eliza, he said quietly. Yes? You did well, he said. You chose silence when speaking would have been easier. Her throat tightened. It didn't feel easy. No, he agreed. It rarely does. He took another step toward the hall, then stopped again, as if reconsidering. There is one more thing, he said. Her pulse quickened. What? Watcher hesitated, the weight of the next words evident in the way his shoulders tensed. You should know, he said slowly, that restraint does not diminish longing. Her heart thudded. What does it do then? His gaze held hers, unflinching. It concentrates it. The truth of that settled over her like a held breath. Watcher inclined his head once, a gesture that felt almost reverent, and then he stepped into the hallway shadows. The light dimmed around him, folding him into absence with quiet precision. And then he was gone. Eliza sat alone on the sofa, the house suddenly too empty, too still. Her skin still hummed, her heart still raced, her thoughts too loud to ignore. She pressed her fingertips to her wrist where she'd touched him earlier. The warmth was gone, but the memory burned. This is a terrible idea, she whispered to the empty room. The room did not disagree. She closed her eyes, letting the verse echo in her mind as the deer pants for streams of water, and felt the ache of it settle deep in her chest. Longing had a shape now, a focus, and it was no longer content to stay quiet. Eliza stood slowly, moving toward her bedroom with the strange certainty that sleep would not come easily tonight. As she reached the hallway, a faint sensation brushed her awareness. Not touch, not sound. Attention. She froze, heart pounding. Watcher? She whispered. No answer came, but as she stepped forward, she knew, with a clarity that made her breath hitch, that she was not alone with her hunger anymore. Something was listening. And it was waiting. Chapter 4. The Edge of Touch. The night learned her name before sleep did. Eliza lay awake with the lamp off, the house dark except for the thin spill of moonlight slipping through the blinds. Her body was still, disciplined, as if stillness itself could be obedience. But under the quiet, something moved, an awareness that had sharpened since Watcher left, like hunger finding a shape. She did not call for him. She learned instead how to listen. The first sign was always the same. The air grew attentive, not colder, not warmer, present. as if the room leaned toward her without crossing the threshold. She felt it most when she stopped trying to pray properly, when her thoughts loosened their grip on rehearsed words and drifted into silence. It happened near midnight. Eliza rolled onto her side, drawing the blanket higher, and closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. The ache that had settled behind her ribs since the previous night softened into something like expectancy. "You said you'd return," she murmured into the dark, careful not to sound like a summons. The presence gathered. She did not open her eyes at first. She didn't need to. She felt him the way one feels someone standing just beyond reach, by the shift in space, by the way the room refused to be empty. "I said I would," Watcher replied, his voice low, measured, nearer than she'd expected. Her breath caught. She opened her eyes. He stood near the doorway, just inside the spill of moonlight, careful to remain where shadow held him loosely. He looked the same, human enough to deceive, contained enough to ache. "You said you would keep distance," she said softly. "I am," he replied. She swallowed. "It doesn't feel like it." Watcher's gaze held hers, steady and deliberate. Distance is not absence. The truth of that settled over her like a held breath. Eliza pushed herself up, sitting against the headboard, the blanket pooled at her waist. She became acutely aware of the thinness of her nightshirt, of the way moonlight traced the curve of her shoulder. Watcher did not look away. He should have. The knowledge came unbidden. He should have turned, retreated, dissolved back into whatever safe remove heaven had assigned him. He did not. "Is this allowed?" she asked quietly. Watcher hesitated. "It is within bounds," he said, "so long as you do not invite me closer." Her pulse quickened. "Invite," she repeated. "Yes." She studied him, searching for signs of strain. They were there, if you knew how to look. The tension in his shoulders, the stillness of his hands, the way his eyes darkened when her breath changed. "And if I do?" she asked. Watcher's jaw tightened. "Then I must refuse." Something in her chest twisted. "Even if I need you?" His gaze sharpened, something fierce and controlled flickering beneath the surface. "Especially then." Eliza let out a slow breath, the words settling into her body like a challenge. She shifted, drawing one knee up beneath the blanket. The movement was small, but the air responded as if she'd crossed a line. She felt it immediately, the way his attention intensified, the way the room seemed to narrow around them. Watcher inhaled, slow and deliberate. "Careful," he said. She smiled faintly. "I'm just getting comfortable." "You are becoming aware," he corrected. The distinction made her laugh softly. "Isn't that the same thing?" "No," he said. "Comfort dulls, awareness sharpens." She considered that, then nodded. "You're right," she said. "I don't want dull." Watcher's gaze flicked to her mouth again, slower this time, deliberate enough that heat bloomed low in her belly. "Eliza," he said, warning threaded through her name. She met his eyes. "I won't touch you." He exhaled. "That is not the only way to cross a boundary." She tilted her head. "You said the boundary was intentional touch." "With intent," he reminded her. Her lips curved, not in mischief, but in something steadier. "Then let's talk about intent." The silence stretched, taut and humming. "You're testing," Watcher said. "Yes," she admitted, "because I need to know where the edge actually is, not where I'm told it is." His eyes searched her face, something like admiration flickering there before he smothered it. "The edge," he said slowly, "is not a line on the floor. It is a posture of the heart." Eliza's chest tightened. "That's inconvenient." Truth, she thought, often was. She shifted again, letting the blanket slip just slightly from her shoulder. Moonlight traced the line of her collarbone. She did not look away from him as she did it. Watcher's breath hitched, barely audible. She noticed. "I'm not asking you to move," she said softly. "I'm just here." His gaze darkened. "Presence can be invitation." "Only if you choose to read it that way," she countered. Watcher's jaw flexed. You are not ignorant. No, she said, I'm tired of pretending I am. The admission felt like stepping onto a narrow bridge. Dangerous. Necessary. She reached for her Bible on the nightstand, fingers brushing the leather cover. The book felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried more than pages tonight. I need something solid, she said again, echoing herself from the night before. Not just rules. Watcher inclined his head. Read. She opened the book, letting it fall where it would. Her eyes found the verse almost immediately, as if guided. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Song of Solomon 1:2. Her breath caught. She laughed, soft and incredulous. That feels unfair. Watcher's expression tightened. Scripture does not shy away from desire. No, she agreed. But it usually doesn't stand in my bedroom and look at me while I read it. His gaze held hers, steady and reverent. Neither do I, he said. I am not the object of the verse. Eliza's chest tightened. It feels like it. Watcher shook his head slightly. Desire seeks form, he said. You are giving it one. She closed the Bible slowly, setting it aside. I don't know how to do this without you becoming that. His voice dropped. Nor do I. The honesty in it startled her. She shifted again, then stopped, sensing the tension spike. She held still, breathing shallowly. Tell me something, she said. Yes. Do you ever look away? She asked. When you're watching me? Watcher's gaze didn't waver. Often. Her pulse fluttered. Why? Because looking is not neutral, he said. Attention carries weight. She nodded slowly. And right now? I am choosing to look, he said. The words sent a shiver through her. She leaned back against the headboard, stretching her legs beneath the blanket, deliberately making herself comfortable with the knowledge of being seen. She did not touch herself. She did not touch him. She simply existed in her body, aware of every breath, every place where heat gathered. Watcher remained where he was, but she felt the strain in him like a pulled wire. This feels cruel, she murmured. To whom? He asked. She considered. To both of us. Yes, he agreed quietly. That is why restraint is mercy. Sometimes, she said, mercy feels like deprivation. Watcher's eyes softened. It does, he said, especially to the starved. The word lodged in her chest. She turned onto her side, facing him fully now, the blanket shifting with her movement. Moonlight traced the curve of her hip beneath the fabric. She did not hide it. She did not exaggerate it. She let it be. Watcher inhaled sharply, then steadied himself. Eliza, he said, his voice lower now. You are drawing near. I'm staying where I am, she replied. Your body is not, he said. She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the truth of it. The way her skin hummed, the way her breath sought his without permission. What if I need to learn where my body ends and my faith begins? She asked. Watcher's voice was rough. They do not end in different places. The answer sent a pulse of heat through her. She opened her eyes again. Then why does it feel like I'm choosing between them? Because you were taught they are enemies, he said. They are not. Eliza swallowed. Then what are they? Watcher's gaze held hers, something fierce and tender mingling there. They are companions, he said, when rightly ordered. She laughed softly. You keep saying that like it's easy? It is not, he replied, for either of us. The silence that followed was thick with awareness. Eliza felt the edge of something sharp and bright just ahead, something she could step into without touching, without speaking, without crossing any rule he'd named. What if I ask you to stay? She said quietly. Watcher stiffened. I am staying. In the room, she clarified. His jaw tightened. That would be closer. Yes, she said, but not touch. And not invitation, he added. She met his gaze. Is asking you to stay an invitation? Watcher hesitated. The pause told her everything. She smiled faintly. You said presence can be invitation? Yes. Then I won't ask, she said. I'll just make room. She shifted slightly, sliding toward the far side of the bed, leaving space beside her. The movement was deliberate, slow enough to be unmistakable. Watcher's breath caught. Eliza, he warned. She stopped, heart pounding. I'm not asking you to lie down. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to touch me. I know. I'm not even asking you to come closer, she said softly. I'm just acknowledging that there is space. The room seemed to lean inward, as if listening. Watcher stood motionless, the restraint in him taut as a drawn bow. Space is not neutral, he said hoarsely. Neither is distance, she replied. They held each other's gaze, the moment stretched thin and trembling. Watcher took a single step forward, then stopped. The movement sent a jolt through her, sharp and breathless. He was still across the room, still within the bounds he'd set, but the choice had been made visible. He had considered crossing. Her pulse thundered. Why are you doing this? He asked quietly. She searched herself for the truth. Because I spent years convincing myself I didn't need to be wanted, she said. And now I know that was a lie. Watcher's eyes softened. Being wanted is not the same as being taken. I know, she said. That's why I'm still here. The words hung between them, steady and dangerous. Watcher's gaze dropped to the empty space beside her, then lifted back to her face. You are learning to stand at the edge, he said. Yes, she replied, with my eyes open. He nodded once, something like respect flickering there. Eliza, he said, voice low. Read. She reached for the Bible again, hands trembling slightly. She opened it without looking, trusting whatever waited there. Her eyes found the verse immediately. Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Song of Solomon 2:7. Her breath left her in a rush. That's a warning, she said softly. It is also permission, Watcher replied. In its time. She closed the book, pressing her palm flat against the cover as if to ground herself. I don't know what the right time is, she whispered. Watcher's gaze held hers, fierce and restrained. Neither do I. The admission settled between them like a vow. She shifted again, stopping just shy of asking, just shy of crossing, her body angled toward the empty space she'd made. Watcher remained standing, but his presence filled the room now, heavy and focused, like a held breath waiting to be released. Eliza, he said, voice tight, if you invite me to cross that space— I won't, she said quickly. He searched her face. Promise. She hesitated. The hesitation was answer enough. Watcher's jaw clenched. Eliza, she swallowed. I won't ask, she said carefully, but I can't promise I won't want you to. The room went utterly still. Watcher closed his eyes briefly as if in prayer or surrender. When he opened them, the restraint in him burned bright and dangerous. You are standing at the edge, he said again. Yes, she replied, breath shallow, and you are learning how close you can stand without falling, he added. Her heart hammered. How close? Watcher took one step forward, not enough to touch, enough to be undeniable. Eliza's breath hitched. The space between them hummed, taut and alive. Watcher's voice was barely more than a whisper. Close enough, he said, that the next choice must be named. Her pulse roared in her ears. Name it, she whispered. Watcher's gaze locked onto hers, fierce and trembling. Invite me, he said. And the words settled between them, heavy, glowing, dangerous, waiting for her answer. Chapter 5. The Weight of Wings. He did not cross the space. The choice hung between them, heavy, radiant, dangerous. But Watcher held himself where he was, breath shallow, eyes locked on Eliza's face as if the distance itself were a vow he refused to break. Eliza let the silence settle. It felt earned, like the stillness after a storm chooses not to strike. "Invite me," he had said. She did not. Her chest ached with the restraint of it, a quiet throb that surprised her with its insistence. She had expected frustration, maybe anger. Instead, she felt something steadier, respect, sharpened by want. Watcher exhaled slowly, visibly easing back into himself. The room seemed to widen again, the tension redistributing like a held breath finally released. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" she asked, her voice rough. "For choosing awareness over impulse," he replied. "That is not small." She gave a faint, humorless laugh. It didn't feel noble. "No," he agreed. It felt costly. The word lodged in her chest. Watcher stepped back into deeper shadow, careful now, deliberate. The movement hurt more than she expected. She wrapped her arms around herself, not to hide, but to hold something steady inside her. "You said angels can fall," she said after a moment. "Not just through rebellion." Watcher's gaze sharpened. "Yes." "Tell me," she said. "I don't want metaphors." He studied her for a long moment, weighing something invisible. When he spoke, his voice was low, stripped of ornament. "Angels fall when obedience fractures," he said. "When attention fixes where it should not, when love ceases to be directed upward." Eliza frowned. "Love is what causes it?" "Misordered love," he corrected. "Even love can become gravity." The phrase sent a shiver through her. "You make it sound inevitable," she said. "It is not," he replied, "but it is possible." She leaned back against the headboard, processing that. "So what are you feeling?" she asked quietly. "Is it misordered?" Watcher's jaw tightened. "It is unaccustomed." The honesty of that startled her. "Explain," she said. "I was made for vigilance," he said, "for nearness to God, for clarity without hunger. Desire does not belong to us the way it belongs to you." "And yet," she prompted. "And yet," he said, voice roughening, "your presence awakens sensation I was not shaped to manage." Her breath caught. "Sensation?" "Yes." She swallowed. "Like what?" Watcher hesitated, eyes flicking away for the first time that night. "Wait," he said finally. "Density. Time." Eliza tilted her head. "Time?" "Angels do not experience it as you do," he said. "Moments do not linger. Attention does not stretch. But with you—" He stopped, breath hitching. "With you, moments gather." The admission sent warmth spreading through her chest, followed quickly by guilt. "That sounds dangerous," she said. "It is," he agreed. She hugged herself tighter. "Why me?" Watcher met her gaze again, something solemn in his expression. "Because you are learning to see yourself again," he said, "and being seen changes what watches." The words reverberated in her, unsettling and intimate. She looked away, staring at the pale rectangle of moonlight on the wall. "I didn't ask to be a catalyst." "No," he said gently, "but you are." Silence stretched between them, quieter now, but no less charged. Eliza felt the ache in her body, present, insistent, but held. She was learning its contours, the way one learns a landscape by walking its edges. "You said obedience has weight," she said. "Yes." "Is that what wings are?" she asked. "Weight?" Watcher's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "Wings are not for flying," he said. "They are for bearing." She turned back to him, startled. "Bearing what?" "Glory," he said. "Command, consequence." The word consequence settled heavily. "And falling?" she asked softly. Watcher's gaze dropped, then lifted again, darker now. "Falling is when the weight shifts," he said. "When what you bear pulls you down instead of up." Eliza's throat tightened. "And love does that?" "Love can," he replied, "especially when it asks to be returned." Her pulse thudded. "So if I—" "Do not," he said gently but firmly. She closed her mouth, chastened. Watcher took a slow breath. "You asked for honesty," he said. "Here it is. I am not meant to want your wanting." The phrase hit her like a confession. "And yet," she whispered. "And yet I am aware of it," he finished. "That is the danger." Eliza stared at him, heart racing. "So what happens now?" Watcher's gaze moved to the Bible on the nightstand, as if seeking anchor there. "Now," he said, "we name the cost." She frowned. "Name it how?" "Plainly," he replied, "so neither of us mistakes this for fantasy." She nodded, bracing herself. "If I cross the boundary," Watcher said, voice steady but low, "I lose my place." Her chest tightened. "You fall." "Yes." "You're exiled." "Yes." "You're separated from God," she said, the words bitter on her tongue. Watcher hesitated. "Not separated," he said, "but altered." "How?" she asked. "Obedience becomes choice," he said. "Clarity becomes struggle. Nearness becomes memory." The cost sounded unbearable. "And you'd accept that?" she asked. Watcher met her gaze, something fierce and sorrowful mingling there. "I would endure it," he said. The admission hollowed her chest. "That's insane," she whispered. "No," he said. "It is love's logic." Eliza shook her head. "I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." Watcher's voice softened. "You are not everything." She flinched. "That's not what it sounded like." He corrected gently. "You are someone. And that is precisely the problem." Her breath caught. They sat with that truth between them, heavy and unyielding. Eliza felt the ache in her body sharpen, not with urgency now, but with significance. This was not about indulgence. It was about impact. She reached for her Bible again, needing something to hold. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. "What should I read?" she asked. Watcher didn't hesitate. "Isaiah?" She flipped pages until the thin paper stilled beneath her hands. Her eyes found the verse. "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings." Isaiah 6:1-2. She read on, breath shallow, until the words lodged in her chest like a warning. "With 2 they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew." She looked up. "They cover themselves." "Yes," Watcher said, "glory demands modesty." The phrase rang strangely intimate. "And the weight?" she asked. "Is born in silence," he replied. Eliza closed the book slowly. "I don't want you to be silent," she said. Watcher's gaze held hers. "That is the invitation," he said quietly. She swallowed. "And the fall." "Yes." They sat with the truth of it, the room quiet and watchful. "I don't want to be rescued," Eliza said after a long moment, "and I don't want to be ruin." Watcher inclined his head. "Those are not the only options." "What are the others?" she asked. "Witness," he said. "Endurance. Restraint." She laughed softly. "You make restraint sound romantic." "It is," he said, "when chosen." Her breath hitched. She shifted slightly, then stilled, careful not to push again. The desire remained, concentrated and bright, but she was learning how to hold it without spilling. "Tell me something else," she said. "Yes?" "Do angels ever regret?" she asked. Watcher considered. "We do not dwell," he said. "But we remember." "And will you remember this?" she asked. His gaze softened, something like tenderness flickering there. "I already do." The admission warmed and wounded her in equal measure. The room grew quieter still, as if listening. "Eliza," Watcher said suddenly. "Yes?" "There is movement," he said, attention shifting subtly. "Above." Her heart jumped. "The other one?" "Not yet," he replied. "But awareness has sharpened." She hugged herself again. "So what do we do?" Watcher's gaze returned to her, steady and intent. "We do nothing," he said, "and we do it faithfully." She nodded slowly, though her body protested. He took another step back, increasing the distance deliberately this time. The ache flared, and then settled, like a muscle learning its limit. "I will not remain much longer tonight," he said. Disappointment flickered through her, swift and sharp. "I know," she said. Watcher paused at the doorway, turning back to look at her one last time. His expression was grave, reverent. "Eliza," he said, "the weight you feel is not temptation alone." She met his gaze. "What is it?" "It is calling," he replied, "and calling always costs more than comfort." The words settled into her bones. He inclined his head once, then stepped back into shadow. The air shifted, softened, and then he was gone. Eliza sat alone, the room suddenly ordinary again, the ache in her body steady and unresolved. She lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling, heart racing not with fear but with clarity. The wanting had not diminished. It had deepened, and somewhere beyond her walls, something vast and attentive had felt the shift. She closed her eyes, the words echoing in her mind. "Wings are for bearing," and wondered how much weight love could hold before it pulled something from the sky. In the quiet, the house creaked softly, settling. And far above her, unseen but undeniable, something shifted its attention, slow, deliberate, and watchful, toward the woman who was learning how to stand beneath falling things. Chapter 6. Prayer Becomes Dangerous. Prayer found her before she found the words. Eliza knelt on the thin rug beside her bed, the fibers rough against her knees, her nightshirt slipping low on one shoulder as she bowed her head. The posture was familiar, automatic even, but tonight it felt exposed, intimate in a way she had not anticipated, as if kneeling itself were a kind of vulnerability she had forgotten how to manage. She closed her eyes. The presence gathered. It was subtler now than the night before, less immediate, but no less attentive. She felt it the way one feels a gaze without sight, a nearness that did not announce itself yet refused to be ignored. "God," she whispered. The word trembled, unsteady as it left her mouth. Silence answered, not empty but listening. Eliza inhaled slowly, steadying herself. She had prayed through worse nights than this, through lawyers' emails and final signatures, through the quiet humiliation of moving her things out of a shared house, through Sundays when the empty space beside her in the pew felt louder than any hymn. But this was different. Prayer no longer felt like reaching upward. It felt like opening. She pressed her palms together, grounding herself in the familiar pressure. "I don't know how to do this," she murmured. "I don't know what I'm asking anymore." The air shifted. Watcher did not appear. He did not need to. "I am listening." His voice came quietly, not from the room but from the space just behind her thoughts. Her breath caught. "I didn't call you," she said softly. "No," he replied. "You prayed." The distinction sent a ripple through her. Eliza swallowed. "That's the problem." She rose slowly from her knees and sat back on her heels, eyes still closed. "Every time I pray now, it feels like you're closer than God." The words came out before she could temper them, honest, dangerous. Silence stretched. Then carefully, "God is not distant," Watcher said. "Your awareness has shifted." "That doesn't make it better," she replied. "It makes it worse." She opened her eyes and stood, pacing the length of the bedroom. Moonlight traced pale bars across the floor. She felt restless in her skin, as if prayer had awakened something her body was eager to finish. "I'm afraid to pray," she admitted, "because every time I quiet myself I feel you." Watcher's presence steadied, restrained. "I am not meant to replace God." "I know," she said sharply. "That's why I'm terrified." She stopped near the window, pressing her fingertips to the glass. It was cool, anchoring. Outside, the oak tree stood bare and patient, branches lifted like empty hands. "I don't want my faith to become misdirected," she whispered. Watcher was quiet for a long moment. When prayer becomes dangerous, he said finally, it is often because it has become honest. Eliza let out a bitter laugh. I thought honesty was the point. It is, he replied, but honesty strips away illusion, including the illusion of control. She turned back toward the room. So what am I supposed to do? Stop praying? No, he said gently. Stop hiding. The words stung because they were true. She leaned back against the dresser, folding her arms. I don't know how to pray without wanting something now. Watcher's voice softened. Wanting is not forbidden. Don't, she warned. Don't tell me that unless you mean it. I mean it, he said, but wanting is not the same as taking. She closed her eyes, frustration tightening her chest. My wanting doesn't feel neutral anymore. No, he agreed. It has found an object. Her pulse quickened. You. Yes. The admission hung between them, bare and unadorned. She laughed softly, more despair than humor. That's not sustainable. No, he said. It is not meant to be. She pushed off the dresser, crossing the room and sitting on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped beneath her weight. She became acutely aware of her body again, of the way her thighs pressed into the fabric, of the warmth that gathered low in her belly when she stilled. This feels like temptation, she said quietly. Watcher did not answer immediately. Then, temptation draws you away from God, he said. This draws you toward truth. Her breath hitched. That's a very fine distinction. It is, he agreed, and it matters. She stared at the floor. My heart lies, she said. Scripture says so. Watcher's presence sharpened slightly. Read, he said. She reached for her Bible, hands unsteady. It opened easily, as if waiting. Her eyes fell on the verse. Each person is tempted when they are lured and enticed by their own desire. James 1:14. There, she said almost triumphantly. Desire. Yes, Watcher replied. And the next part, she continued, voice tight. Desire gives birth to sin. Yes, he said again. She looked up. So don't tell me this isn't temptation. Watcher's voice was steady, careful. Read further. She frowned, scanning the page. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. Her breath slowed. You're saying desire itself isn't the problem, she said slowly. I am saying desire is the raw material, he replied. What you do with it determines its end. She closed the book, pressing her palm flat against the cover. That feels like an impossible responsibility. It is the one given to humans, Watcher said. Angels are spared it. Spared, she echoed softly. Yes, he said, and yet here we are. She met the empty space where she sensed him, her gaze intent. Does prayer make it harder for you? She asked. Watcher hesitated. The pause was answer enough. Yes, he said quietly. Her chest tightened. Because you hear me? Because I attend, he replied, and attention shapes desire. She nodded slowly. So when I pray now, I'm not just talking to God. No, he said, you are standing where heaven listens. The words sent a shiver through her. That's too much, she whispered. It is weight, he replied, not punishment. She leaned back on her hands, staring at the ceiling. I used to pray for my marriage, she said, for it to be fixed, for us to be close again. Watcher was silent. I prayed until the wanting hurt too much, she continued. Then I stopped wanting, or I thought I did. Her voice wavered. Was that obedience? Watcher's voice softened. It was survival. She swallowed. And now? Now, he said, you are learning to live again. The statement felt both hopeful and terrifying. She turned onto her side, drawing her knees up slightly. The movement pulled the nightshirt tighter across her body. She felt his attention sharpen, then steady, restrained, disciplined. You said angels don't experience hunger like this, she said. So what do you call what you're feeling? Watcher was quiet for a long moment. Burden, he said finally, and beauty. Her breath caught. That's not fair, she whispered. No, he agreed, but it is true. She closed her eyes, letting the ache settle, letting herself feel it without acting. The wanting did not recede. It deepened, becoming something steadier, more deliberate. I don't want to pray wrong, she said. Watcher's voice was close now, reverent. Then pray plainly. She hesitated. If I do, will you hear it? Yes. And heaven? Yes. Her pulse quickened. That feels like exposure. It is, he replied. Prayer always is. She took a slow breath, centering herself. Okay, she said softly. Then help me. How? He asked. Tell me what's allowed, she said. Tell me what I can ask for without crossing. Watcher hesitated again, tension threading through his presence. You may ask for clarity, he said, for strength, for wisdom. And what about relief? She asked. From this wanting? Silence. Watcher's voice came quieter this time. Relief is not always given, he said. Sometimes the prayer is endurance. Her chest tightened. That sounds cruel. It can feel that way, he admitted, but endurance shapes truth. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Watcher's presence warmed, not closer but more focused. Strength is not the absence of desire, he said. It is choosing not to be ruled by it. She nodded slowly. And what about you? She asked. What do you pray for? The question surprised them both. Watcher's stillness deepened. Angels do not pray as you do, he said, but we attend to command. And right now? She pressed. His voice was low, unguarded. I attend to restraint. The honesty of it sent heat curling through her. That sounds lonely, she murmured. It is, he said. The word landed heavily. She shifted closer to the headboard, careful not to invite, not to cross. Then maybe prayer isn't just about asking God for things, she said slowly. Maybe it's about staying with what's hard. Watcher's presence softened. Yes, he said. Staying is holy work. She let the words settle. Okay, she whispered. Then I'll pray. Watcher grew very still. Eliza closed her eyes and folded her hands loosely in her lap. She did not kneel. She did not perform. She simply spoke. God, she said quietly, I don't know what to do with this wanting. I don't know where it leads. I don't want to harm what you love, and I don't want to disappear again. Her breath hitched. If this longing is from you, teach me how to carry it, and if it's not, take it from me. Silence followed, deep, listening, alive. The air seemed to thicken, not with Watcher's presence but with something broader, heavier. Eliza felt the attention shift, expand. Watcher's voice was barely audible. Eliza. She opened her eyes. The room felt different, charged, not intimate now, judicial. What? She whispered. There is response, Watcher said. Not answer, response. Her heart pounded. From God? From heaven, he replied. The temperature dropped slightly. The shadows along the walls sharpened. Eliza sat very still. You asked for clarity, Watcher said, voice tight, and heaven does not always answer gently. A sound, not a voice, not a knock, resonated through the house, low and vibrating, like stones struck deep underground. Eliza's breath went shallow. Is it? Yes, Watcher said. Awareness has turned toward you. Her chest tightened. I didn't ask for judgment. No, he said softly. You asked for truth. The sound came again, closer now, more defined. The air in the hallway rippled. Watcher's presence sharpened into something fierce and protective. You must listen, he said urgently, but you must not rush. Eliza's heart thundered. What's happening? Prayer, he replied grimly. has opened a door. The sound resolved into words this time, not spoken, but known. Show us what you carry. Eliza's breath caught. That's not fair. Watcher's voice was low, strained. Fairness is not the measure here. The pressure in the room intensified, pressing against her chest like a held breath. Eliza, Watcher said, urgency threading his voice, if they ask you to name your desire, I won't, she said quickly. I learned that lesson. His silence was heavy. What? She demanded. They may not ask, he said. They may require demonstration. Her blood ran cold. Demonstration of what? The air in the hallway shifted again, forming a shape. Indistinct, luminous at the edges, terrible in its calm. Watcher's voice dropped to a whisper, fierce with warning. Whether your prayer was for relief, he said, or for permission. The shape leaned closer. The pressure mounted. Eliza's pulse roared in her ears as the truth settled with chilling clarity. Prayer had not quieted her longing. It had summoned scrutiny. And now heaven itself waited to see what she would do with what she wanted most. The presence in the hallway advanced one measured step, and the room held its breath. Chapter 7. The Line. Heaven drew. She felt watched in places no one had ever seen. Eliza sat on the edge of her bed, spine rigid, fingers curled into the quilt as if fabric could anchor her to the world she understood. The air pressed in around her, dense, listening, not merely present but measuring. The shape in the hallway remained indistinct, luminous at its edges, as if it refused the human comfort of clarity. Watcher stayed unseen, but she felt him near the way she felt her own pulse, constant, contained, and suddenly urgent. Show us what you carry. The words weren't spoken aloud. They arrived whole, heavy as a verdict, settling into her ribs. Eliza swallowed hard. I didn't ask for this, she whispered, and the smallness of her voice made her feel like a child again, caught between a rule and a consequence. Watcher's presence sharpened. Do not argue, he warned, low and immediate. It is not a conversation. Her throat tightened. Then what is it? A line, he said. The hallway shape advanced one measured step, and the temperature dropped another degree, not cold enough to freeze, but cold enough to remind her her body was fragile, mortal, subject to breath. Eliza's breath went shallow. The shape did not cross the threshold into her bedroom. It simply waited at the boundary, as if even judgment honored architecture. Watcher's voice came quietly, tight with restraint. They will not force you, he said. They will require you. That's not better, she breathed. No, he agreed, but it is mercy. The air pressed again, an unseen hand flattening the room. Show us. Eliza's stomach twisted. How? She whispered. The answer came like a weight placed into her palms. Stand. Her body reacted before her mind could. Her feet found the floor. She rose slowly, unsteady. The rug felt rough beneath her toes. The room seemed farther away, as if she had stepped out of it without moving. Watcher's presence slid closer, not in distance, but in focus. Do exactly what is asked, he murmured. No more. Eliza nodded once, throat too tight for words. The hallway light, moonlight, lamplight, whatever it was, shifted. The shape became clearer at its edges. Not wings, not robes, not anything she could describe without sounding insane. It was form without flesh, attention given outline. It was not beautiful, it was not ugly, it was simply absolute. Eliza took one step toward the hall, then stopped at the bedroom threshold, heart pounding. She could feel the boundary like a wire under the skin of the house. Watcher's voice came again, quieter. Eliza. She turned her head slightly, as if she might glimpse him in the corner of her vision, though she knew she wouldn't. What? She whispered. If they ask you to name your desire, he said, silence is safety. She nodded, barely breathing. And if they ask me to demonstrate? Silence. Watcher's stillness answered before his words did. Then you must demonstrate restraint, he said at last, "not longing." Eliza's mouth went dry. How do I demonstrate restraint when they're staring straight through me? You choose, he replied. The shape in the hallway shifted again. Come. The word was not an invitation. Eliza stepped forward. The hallway air hit her like standing too close to an open freezer, sharp, sterile, and oddly clean. Her skin prickled. Her breath steamed faintly in front of her mouth. The shape stood at the far end of the hall near the living room, between her and the open Bible still waiting in the chair like a witness that refused to go home. Eliza's heart hammered. "Is this the part where you tell me not to be afraid?" she muttered, bitterness rising out of sheer survival instinct. Watcher's presence tightened, almost pained. "Fear is appropriate," he said. "Do not let it steer you." The shape moved. Again, one measured step, and Eliza felt something in her chest give way, a subtle loosening that made her suddenly aware of every place she'd been holding herself together for years. Her divorce flashed through her, quiet signatures, polite smiles, the unspoken relief mixed with humiliation. The Sunday after, when a woman in her small group had hugged her too tightly and said, "God hates divorce, but he loves you," as if love were an apology for shame, Eliza clenched her jaw. She would not be reduced to a warning label tonight. The shape stopped, the pressure in the hallway concentrated, as if it had narrowed its attention to a single point. Her mouth. "Speak what you carry." Eliza's throat constricted. Watcher's voice cut in, urgent and low. "Do not." Eliza stared at the shape, hands trembling at her sides. "I carry grief," she said before she could stop herself. Watcher went still. The hallway pressure held, listening. Eliza swallowed, realizing what she'd done. She'd spoken, yes, but not what it wanted, not desire. "I carry shame," she continued, voice steadier now, anger giving her spine. "I carry loneliness. I carry the way my faith has been used like a leash." Watcher's presence sharpened with something like surprise, not disapproval, recognition. The shape did not interrupt. Eliza drew a shaky breath. "I carry longing," she said, and the word landed in the air like a spark. Dangerous, bright. Her heart lurched. Watcher's voice came harsh and immediate. "Eliza." She lifted her chin, eyes burning. "You asked what I carry," she whispered. "That's part of it." The pressure increased, as if the shape leaned closer without moving. "Name it." Eliza's mouth went dry. The air seemed to tighten around her tongue. Watcher's presence surged, fierce. "Silence," he breathed. "Silence is safety." Eliza's hands clenched. "No," she whispered, not to Watcher, not to the shape, but to the thing inside her that wanted to be reckless just to feel something real. Her eyes flicked to the living room chair, her Bible still open like an exposed nerve. She needed scripture now, not as decoration, not as a weapon, as anchor. Eliza turned abruptly and walked toward the living room, step stiff, heart pounding. The hallway pressure followed, not moving like a person but like a tension sliding across glass. She reached the chair and stared down at the pages. Watcher's presence steadied behind her, a silent guardrail. "Read," he murmured. Eliza's hands shook as she gripped the edges of the Bible. The page was still open from earlier, but her eyes refused to land there. She flipped once, twice, paper whispering in the too quiet room, until her fingers stilled. A verse caught her gaze like it had been waiting. "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it." 1 Corinthians 10:13. Eliza read it once, then again, the words settling into her bones. "A way out," she whispered. Her voice trembled. Watcher's presence warmed, approval or relief. "Yes," he said softly. "Endurance is often the way." The hallway pressure tightened again, as if unimpressed by Scripture's comfort. "Demonstrate." Eliza's stomach dropped. "Demonstrate what?" she demanded, turning toward the hallway. The shape had moved closer, now standing at the threshold between hall and living room. It did not enter fully, as if unwilling to contaminate the ordinary with its fullness, but its presence filled the doorway. The pressure fixed on Eliza's hands. "Show restraint." Eliza blinked hard. "How?" The answer came like a blade drawn slowly from a sheath. "Approach the Watcher." Eliza froze. Her pulse roared in her ears. She felt Watcher's presence tighten instantly, alarm, sharp and immediate. "No," he said, voice low and fierce. Eliza's breath turned shallow. "It asked me," she whispered. "It is a test," he replied. "Do not accept its terms." The hallway pressure increased, insistent. "Approach." Eliza stood still, caught between two commands. She could feel Watcher nearer now, not physically, but concentrated, as if he had stepped to the edge of whatever distance he'd been holding. "Where are you?" she whispered, turning her head slightly as if to find him in shadow. "I am here," he said, and his voice sounded closer than it should have. "Do not look for me." Eliza swallowed. Her body wanted to move toward him like a compass needle pulled by a hidden magnet. The wanting rose sharp, hot, immediate, exactly what heaven was asking to measure. She squeezed the Bible against her chest, leather biting into her palms. "Approach." The command pressed again, and Eliza's knees almost buckled. Tears burned her eyes, furious and helpless. "I don't understand," she whispered. "If you're testing restraint, why are you telling me to go toward him?" Watcher answered before the shape could. "Because the line is not distance," he said tightly. "It is intent." Eliza's breath caught. The shape did not deny it. Watcher's voice dropped, urgent and trembling with restraint. "If you approach with longing," he said, "you invite gravity. If you approach with obedience—" "With obedience," Eliza repeated, grasping at the word like a rope. "Yes," he said, "then you demonstrate that you can be near what you want without being ruled by it." Eliza's chest heaved. "And if I fail?" Watcher's silence was sharp, then softly. "Then I am taken." The words sent cold flooding through her. Taken. From her. Removed. Withdrawn permanently. Her throat tightened. "Because of me?" "No," Watcher said fiercely. "Because of choice." Eliza stared at the doorway shape, anger flaring again. "This is cruel," she whispered. The shape's response arrived without warmth or apology. "Truth is not cruel. It is simply not comforting." Eliza's hands trembled around the Bible. She closed her eyes for one brief moment and breathed, slow and deliberate, forcing her body to obey her mind. "God is faithful. He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it." The verse steadied her. Eliza opened her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Watcher's presence surged, tight with warning. "Eliza!" "I'm going to do it," she said quietly, "but not the way it wants." The hallway pressure sharpened, attentive. Eliza stepped forward, one step, then another. She moved toward the doorway where the shape lingered, but she did not look at it. She kept her gaze on the floor, on the ordinary grain of the wood, on the rug edge, on anything that would keep her anchored in the mundane. Her body screamed awareness, of Watcher's nearness somewhere unseen, of the invisible gravity between them. She did not deny it. She simply refused to let it steer. "Where are you?" she whispered again, voice shaking despite her effort. "You are close enough," Watcher said, and the strain in his voice made her chest ache. Eliza stopped in the center of the living room, heart pounding. "Is this close enough?" she asked. "Yes," he said, and the word sounded like pain. The hallway pressure tightened, focusing now not on her mouth but on her hands. Touch. Eliza's blood ran cold. Watcher's voice snapped fierce. "No!" Eliza's breath hitched, her fingers tightened around the Bible. The shape's command pressed again, inexorable. "Touch the Watcher." Eliza's mind reeled. "That violates the boundary," she whispered, panic rising. Watcher's presence was taut, trembling. "Yes," he said, "that is the point." Eliza's vision blurred with tears. "Then how is this a test of restraint?" she demanded. Watcher's voice came low, urgent. "Because you can touch without intent," he said. "Accident, passing steadiness. But if you touch with longing—" "I invite the fall," Eliza whispered. "Yes," he said, "and heaven will measure the difference." Eliza's hands shook so badly the Bible's pages fluttered. The room held its breath. "Touch." Eliza stood trembling in the center of the living room, torn open by the impossible demand. Touch him and risk binding him. Refuse and risk being judged unwilling to endure. She looked down at her own hands, then at the empty air where she sensed Watcher nearest, close enough that her skin prickled as if he stood inches away. "Tell me what to do," she whispered, voice breaking. "Tell me how to do it right." Watcher's presence pressed close, so close it felt like warmth at her shoulder without contact. His voice was a rasp. "If you do this," he said, "do it with obedience, not hunger, not need, not invitation." Eliza nodded, tears spilling now. The hallway pressure became almost tender in its insistence, as if even judgment could be patient. "Show us." Eliza lifted her hand, slowly, deliberately. She reached into the empty space where she felt Watcher's presence most concentrated, near her right side, as if he stood just out of sight beside her. Her fingertips hovered, trembling, a breath away from whatever invisible boundary held him. Watcher's voice broke, barely audible. "Eliza!" Her lungs locked, her hand moved the final inch, and her fingertips met something warm and solid, like a forearm held in perfect stillness. The contact snapped through her like lightning, not pleasure, not yet. Power, presence, realness. The room tightened violently, the hallway pressure surging as if tasting the moment. Eliza clenched her teeth, forcing her mind to one thought only: obedience. Watcher's breath hitched, raw, uncontrolled. "Eliza," he whispered, and her name sounded like surrender. The air went utterly still. Then the shape in the doorway spoke, not aloud, but into her bones. "Name the intent of your touch." Eliza's blood turned to ice. Her fingertips remained pressed to his skin, warmth spreading into her hand like a brand. Watcher's voice was ragged, urgent. "Do not," he breathed. "Whatever you say next, do not say it wrong." Eliza stared at the empty air in front of her, shaking, the question crushing down on her chest. What was her intent? Comfort? Proof? Obedience? Or the truth she refused to name? Her mouth opened on a breath, and the room waited. Chapter 8. Witness. "I intend obedience." The words left Eliza's mouth like a held breath finally released, careful, deliberate, chosen. She spoke them slowly, as if heaven itself might mishear haste. The pressure in the room did not ease. Her fingertips still rested against Watcher's forearm, warm, solid, undeniably real. The contact hummed, a low vibration that traveled up her arm and settled behind her ribs. Not pleasure, not yet. Awareness sharpened to a blade. Watcher did not move. His stillness was absolute, a discipline so total it felt reverent. She sensed the strain in him anyway, the effort it took to remain nothing more than what he was permitted to be. Obedience. The presence in the doorway echoed, not approval, not accusation. Measurement. The pressure shifted, sliding across the room like a searchlight, then settled again on Eliza's hand. Release. Relief surged through her, swift, almost dizzying. Eliza pulled her hand back immediately, fingers curling into her palm as if she could fold the sensation away. The moment contact broke, the air loosened, not warm, but less severe, like a storm pausing between thunderclaps. Watcher exhaled, a sound she felt more than heard. The shape in the doorway stepped fully into the living room at last. Eliza's breath caught. This one did not blur at the edges. It chose form deliberately, not human, not angel as she had ever imagined, but something nearer to function. It radiated attention the way heat radiates from a furnace, indifferent to comfort. Watcher's presence snapped taut, unmistakably alert. "You were warned," the figure said, not to Eliza, but to him. Watcher inclined his head. I am aware. Eliza's stomach dropped. This was not a private reckoning. This was witness. The figure's gaze slid to her, unblinking. You demonstrated restraint. Eliza nodded, throat tight. I tried. Intent matters, it replied. You named it correctly. Her knees nearly gave out with relief. Then the figure turned fully toward Watcher. You, it said, and the word landed with weight. Have accumulated proximity. Watcher's shoulders squared. Yes. Attention. Yes. Delay. Yes. Each admission sounded like a confession offered without defense. Eliza's chest tightened. He didn't, she began. Watcher's voice cut in sharply. Do not, he said, not harsh, but urgent. This is not your burden to carry. The figure regarded him coolly. It may yet become so. The pressure in the room deepened again, not crushing, but inescapable. You have been assigned to observe, the figure continued, not to linger. Watcher did not flinch. Observation requires nearness. Not this kind. Silence stretched, heavy and deliberate. Eliza folded her arms around herself, fighting the instinct to step closer to him, to put her body between Watcher and judgment like she could absorb consequence by proximity. The desire flared hot and immediate, and she forced it down, anchoring herself in breath. Watcher's presence pulsed once, subtle but unmistakable. Stay still, it seemed to say. The figure turned its gaze back to Eliza. You have been measured, it said, and found capable. Her breath caught. Capable of what? Endurance. The word landed like both compliment and sentence. Eliza swallowed. Is that all faith ever asks of us? Watcher's presence sharpened at her side, alarm flickering. The figure considered her, attention narrowing. Faith asks for alignment, it replied. Endurance is the means. She thought of the years she'd spent enduring, marriage that thinned into obligation, divorce that hollowed her out, church smiles that never quite reached her eyes. Endurance felt less like virtue and more like survival. That sounds lonely, she said quietly. The figure did not disagree. Watcher shifted just slightly, the first movement he'd made since judgment entered the room. The restraint in him flexed like a muscle pushed too far. She has endured enough, he said. Eliza's heart lurched at the fierce certainty in his voice. The figure's attention snapped back to him. This is not your determination to make. Watcher's jaw tightened. It is my observation. Your observation has compromised you. The words landed like a blow. Eliza stepped forward before she could stop herself. He hasn't done anything wrong. Watcher's voice snapped again, sharper now. Eliza! She froze. The figure regarded her coolly. You are not on trial, it said. Yet. The word yet echoed ominously. Watcher inhaled slowly, visibly collecting himself. When he spoke again, his voice was measured, disciplined. State the assessment. The figure inclined its head a fraction. You will be reassigned. Eliza's heart dropped. Watcher did not react outwardly, but she felt the shift in him, the tightening, the withdrawal of something she had come to rely on without realizing it. Immediately? He asked. Not yet. A fragile hope flared. You are permitted one remaining interval, the figure continued, to conclude what has begun. Eliza's breath caught. Conclude sounded final in a way that made her chest ache. And then? Watcher asked quietly. Then you will be removed from proximity. Removed. Eliza's throat tightened painfully. For how long? The figure's gaze slid to her, impassive. Duration is not specified. Watcher's presence pulsed again, a warning she felt rather than heard. Why? She demanded, unable to hold the question back. If restraint is what you wanted, why punish it? The figure studied her, something like curiosity flickering at the edges of its attention. Restraint is not punishment, it said. Attachment is risk. Watcher's voice dropped. Rougher now. Then say it plainly. The figure did not hesitate. You are becoming attached. Silence fell. Eliza's breath came shallow and fast. She looked at Watcher, searching for denial, for anything that might soften the blow. He did not deny it. The truth of it settled between them, heavy and undeniable. She had known it already, of course, in the way her body leaned toward his absence, in the way prayer had begun to feel like proximity instead of distance. The figure turned its attention fully to him again. Your allowance is this, it said. One remaining choice. Watcher's gaze hardened. Choice between what? Withdrawal, the figure replied, or consequence. Eliza's chest constricted. You're asking him to leave. Yes. Watcher closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the restraint in him burned bright and steady. And if I do not? Then you will fall. The word echoed through the room, heavier than it had ever sounded before. Eliza's knees trembled. She reached instinctively for the back of the chair, grounding herself in the ordinary world. Watcher turned his head slightly toward her, not enough to see him fully, but enough that she felt the weight of his attention settle on her like a hand at her shoulder. Eliza, he said softly. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. Don't, she whispered. Don't look at me like that. I must, he replied. The figure watched them both, silent now, its presence a reminder that this was not a private moment. Watcher straightened. State the condition. The figure inclined its head. If you remain beyond the next interval, it said, you do so without protection. Eliza's heart slammed against her ribs. Protection from what? From consequence, it replied. Watcher's voice was calm, too calm. Define consequence. Loss of status, the figure said. Loss of clarity. Loss of nearness. Eliza's breath hitched. To God? The figure paused, a fraction of a second that felt deliberate. Nearness will be altered, it said. Not erased. Watcher's jaw tightened. You are asking me to choose between obedience and incarnation. The figure did not answer. That, Eliza realized with a jolt, was the answer. The figure stepped back, retreating toward the doorway with measured precision. You have until dawn, it said. After that, proximity will be revoked. It turned its gaze to Eliza one last time. Guard your intent. Then it was gone. The pressure lifted abruptly, leaving the room strangely hollow, like air rushing back into a vacuum. Eliza sagged against the chair, breath coming in shaky gasps. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Watcher's presence surged toward her instantly, not touching, not crossing, but close enough that she felt steadied by it. Are you all right? He asked quietly. She laughed weakly. Define all right. He did not answer that. She wiped at her eyes, furious at the tears. They're going to take you away. Yes. And if they do, I will obey, he said. The certainty in his voice cut deeper than anything else had. Eliza's chest ached. And what about everything we haven't said? Watcher was silent for a long moment. Those things do not require permission, he said finally. They require restraint. She shook her head. That doesn't feel like enough. No, he agreed. It rarely does. She sank onto the chair, curling inward, suddenly exhausted. What am I supposed to do? She asked. Pretend this didn't happen? No, he said gently. Remember correctly. She looked up. What does that mean? That longing does not entitle, he said, and restraint does not negate feeling. She laughed softly, bitter and tired. You make everything sound like a sermon. I have listened to many, he replied. Despite herself, she smiled faintly. The smile faded quickly. Will I see you again after dawn? Watcher hesitated. The pause was answer enough. Her throat tightened. Then this is goodbye. Not yet, he said. There is still an interval. She swallowed. What are we allowed to do in it? Watcher's presence steadied, careful and deliberate. "We may speak," he said. "We may witness. We may choose not to cross." "And if we fail?" His voice dropped. "Then consequence will find us." Eliza nodded slowly, the weight of it settling in her bones. She reached for her Bible again, needing anchor more than ever. Her fingers found a page as if guided. She read aloud, voice trembling but clear, "Choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Joshua 24:15. The words echoed in the quiet room. Watcher's presence warmed. "Choice," he said softly. "Always choice." She closed the book, pressing it to her chest. "I don't want to be the reason you fall." He answered without hesitation. "You are not the reason," he said. "You are the question." The distinction settled over her like a blessing and a burden all at once. Outside, the first hint of dawn lightened the edge of the sky, barely perceptible, but undeniable. Time, she realized, was no longer neutral. Watcher turned his attention toward the window, then back to her. "We do not have much." Her heart hammered. "Much what?" He met her gaze, something fierce and tender mingling there. "Time," he said, "before heaven asks me to choose." And the word choose hung between them, bright, terrible, and unresolved, as the night thinned and the morning crept closer. Chapter 9. The space between yes and no. Dawn did not hurry. The light at the edge of the sky thinned the darkness slowly, deliberately, as if even morning understood the gravity of what waited to be decided. Eliza sat on the sofa with her hands folded in her lap, spine straight, breath measured. She felt older in the quiet, not tired but weighted, like someone who had been trusted with something fragile and dangerous and had not yet broken it. Watcher stood across the room, nearer now than he had been since the judgment came. Not touching, not crossing, but present in a way that made the space between them feel like a living thing, taut, aware, waiting. "You said we have an interval," Eliza said softly. "Is this it?" "Yes," he replied, "until the light clears the horizon." She glanced toward the window. The sky was pearl gray now, the sun still hidden. Time pressed in, no longer abstract. "Then we should speak," she said, "before we lose the chance." Watcher inclined his head. "We should." The words that followed did not come easily. They gathered, slow and deliberate, like a procession she could not rush. "I've been thinking about what they said," Eliza began. "About attachment." Watcher's gaze sharpened slightly. "Yes." "They spoke like it was a flaw," she continued. "A failure of discipline." "Attachment is risk," he said. "To heaven, risk is inefficiency." She huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. "That tracks." Silence stretched. Eliza stared at the worn rug, at the faint line where sunlight would soon reach. She could feel the wanting still, present, insistent, but it had changed shape overnight. It felt steadier now, less like fire, more like gravity. "I need to say something," she said, lifting her eyes to him, "and I don't know how to do it without sounding disobedient." Watcher's voice was calm. "Say it plainly." She drew a breath. "I would choose you." The words landed without drama, no tremor, no rush, just truth laid bare. Watcher did not move, but something in him shifted, subtle and profound, like a line pulled taut. "Eliza," he said quietly. "I know," she continued, voice steady. "I know the cost. I know what it would mean for you. I'm not pretending this is noble or clean or anything that would look good from a distance." She swallowed. "But if the choice were mine alone, I would choose you." The room felt suddenly smaller, as if it leaned in to hear. Watcher closed his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them, the restraint in him burned bright and dangerous. "That," he said, "is what I cannot hear." Her chest tightened. "Because it tempts you?" "Yes," he said, "and because it names what I am trying not to want." She nodded slowly. "I needed you to know anyway. I do, he replied. I have known. The admission sent a pulse through her, warm and aching. She leaned back against the sofa cushions, suddenly exhausted by the honesty of it. Then tell me the truth, she said. Tell me what you want. Watcher hesitated. The pause stretched longer than any before it, heavy with consequence. When he spoke, his voice was lower, stripped of ornament. I want to remain, he said, near you, attentive, witnessing. Her breath hitched. That's not all. No, he agreed. It is not. She waited, heart pounding, refusing to fill the silence for him. I want your awareness, he continued slowly, your presence, your choosing to stand where I stand. Her fingers curled into the cushion beneath her. That sounds like companionship. It is, he said. And the rest? She whispered. Watcher's gaze held hers, unflinching. The rest, he said, is what would unmake me. The truth of that settled over her like a cold clarity. You're hoping, she said quietly. He did not deny it. Hope, thin, dangerous, radiant, hung between them. Eliza pressed her palm flat against her chest, grounding herself in the steady beat of her heart. You said the choice might not be mine alone, she said. What did you mean? Watcher drew a slow breath. I am not free in the way you are, he said, even now. Her stomach tightened. Because of heaven. Yes. And yet they gave you an interval, she pressed. A choice. A conditional one, he replied. Remain and fall, withdraw and be preserved. She shook her head. That's not a choice. That's coercion. It is order, he said. Order often masquerades as inevitability. She studied him, seeing not just restraint now, but fatigue, weight, the cost of bearing something that was never meant to be questioned. What happens if you withdraw? She asked. Watcher's gaze drifted toward the window. Proximity ends, he said. Assignment changes, memory remains. And you? She asked. What happens to you? He met her eyes again. I return to clarity. The word sounded hollow. And if you don't? She asked. Then I fall, he said simply. Her throat tightened. And that means becoming human? Not fully, he replied, but nearer than intended. She let out a slow breath. Nearer to suffering. Yes, and to desire. Yes, she swallowed. To me. Watcher's jaw tightened. Yes. The silence that followed was not empty. It was dense with everything they were not touching, not naming, not doing. Eliza shifted on the sofa, turning her body toward him more fully. She did not invite. She did not reach. She simply oriented herself to the truth between them. You know what scares me most? She said. What? He asked. That this is the first time in years I don't feel like my wanting is a liability, she said, like something I have to apologize for. Watcher's gaze softened. It is not, she nodded. And yet it's costing you. Yes, he said. She laughed softly, bitter and tender all at once. I didn't mean to become dangerous. Danger, he replied, is often proximity to truth. She looked at him for a long moment. Do you think God disapproves of this? She asked. Watcher was quiet. Then, carefully, I think God sees it. That's not an answer, she said. It is the only honest one I have, he replied. The first edge of sunlight slipped over the horizon, spilling pale gold across the floor. Time tightened. Eliza, Watcher said softly, there is something you must understand. She met his gaze. Tell me. The choice may not belong to you, he said, but the cost will touch you regardless. Her chest constricted. How? If I withdraw, he said, you will grieve. And if you fall? You will carry the weight of having been chosen. The words landed heavy and irreversible. She closed her eyes, breathing through the ache. I don't want to be your temptation. You are not, he said firmly. You are my awareness. She opened her eyes again. That doesn't make it easier. No, he agreed. It makes it truer. The light in the room grew brighter, creeping toward Watcher's feet. We're running out of time, she whispered. Yes, he said. She stood slowly, careful, deliberate. Her body felt steady now, not calm, but resolved. She took one step toward him, stopping well short of contact. I need to say this clearly, she said, so I don't regret my silence later. Watcher's gaze sharpened, attentive. I would choose you, she repeated, but I will not ask you to fall. His breath caught. And I won't pretend that means I don't want you, she continued. It means I want you enough not to bind you. The truth of it rang like a bell. Watcher closed his eyes just for a moment. When he opened them, something in him had shifted, not broken, but braced. You are choosing restraint, he said softly. Yes, she replied, with my eyes open. The sunlight reached him then, brushing the edge of his presence. The air around him shimmered faintly like heat over stone. Watcher straightened, resolve settling into him like armor. There is one more thing, he said. Her heart pounded. What? He met her gaze, fierce and gentle at once. The final choice may not be mine either. Her stomach dropped. What do you mean? Heaven may decide, he said, based on what it has witnessed. The light intensified, filling the room with quiet gold. Eliza's throat tightened. So this is out of our hands? No, he said. It is simply larger than us. The air shifted, not cold, not heavy, attentive. Watcher's presence sharpened, recognition flashing through him. It has begun, he said. The light flared, sudden and absolute, washing the room in brilliance that erased shadow and detail alike. Eliza squeezed her eyes shut, heart racing. Watcher, she cried. His voice came steady, urgent, closer than it had ever been. Remember what you chose. The light intensified. And the room disappeared. Chapter 10. The Cost of Wanting. She woke to absence, not emptiness. Absence had a shape now. It pressed against Eliza's chest like a held breath that never released. The room was intact, the sofa, the window, the pale gold smear of morning light on the floor. But the attention that had filled the air only moments before was gone, withdrawn so cleanly it left an ache. Watcher? She whispered. The word fell flat, unanswered. Eliza sat up slowly, pulse racing, the memory of light still burning behind her eyes. She pressed her palms into the cushions on either side of her, grounding herself. The house creaked softly, settling into ordinariness with an almost cruel insistence. She stood and crossed the room, bare feet cold against the floor, scanning the hallway, the living room, the kitchen. Nothing. No pressure. No warmth. No watchfulness. For the first time since this began, she was truly alone. The realization brought relief, and grief so sharp it stole her breath. Eliza leaned against the door frame, steadying herself. This is what you wanted, she murmured, unsure whether she was speaking to heaven, to Watcher, or to herself. Clarity. The word rang hollow. She moved through her morning mechanically, water in the kettle, coffee grounds measured without thought, the familiar hiss and gurgle of routine reasserting itself. The ordinariness felt surreal, like a set built around a vanished play. As she waited for the coffee to brew, her eyes drifted to the chair where her Bible still lay. She had not closed it the night before. The pages were thin, exposed, vulnerable. She crossed the room and picked it up, fingers brushing the worn leather. The contact steadied her, even as her chest tightened. Tell me what this costs, she whispered. The kettle clicked off. Silence settled. She opened the Bible, not letting it fall where it would this time. She turned pages deliberately, searching for something, she wasn't sure what, until a verse caught her eye. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? Luke 14:28. Eliza exhaled slowly. Of course, she murmured. You'd say that. The verse did not soften under scrutiny. It did not offer comfort. It offered calculation. She closed the book and held it against her chest, feeling the weight of it, paper and promise, warning and invitation. You said wanting has a cost, she said aloud. I'm listening. The air shifted. Not suddenly, not forcefully, but with intention. Eliza's breath caught as awareness gathered behind her, lighter now, more contained, but unmistakable. Watcher, she said, not turning. Yes, he replied quietly. Relief surged through her so fast it made her dizzy. She turned, heart pounding. He stood near the window, the morning light outlining him in soft gold. He looked different, not diminished, altered. There was weight in him now, but also strain, like something held too long under tension. They didn't take you, she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Not yet, he replied. She crossed the room, stopping well short of him, careful even in relief. What happened? Watcher's gaze met hers, steady but grave. Assessment, he said. Deliberation. And the verdict? Deferred. Her chest tightened. That doesn't sound good. It is not merciful, he agreed, but it is time. She nodded slowly. Time, the most dangerous allowance of all. Watcher turned slightly, angling his body toward the window rather than toward her. The distance felt intentional, protective. There is something you must understand, he said. Her stomach dropped. I'm starting to hate that sentence. His lips curved faintly, not humor, but acknowledgement. The cost of wanting is not paid all at once, he said. It accrues. She folded her arms around herself. Like interest. Yes, he replied. Like gravity. She swallowed. Then tell me plainly, what does it cost you? Watcher was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, stripped of ceremony. I am beginning to experience time, he said. Her breath caught. You said that before. Yes, he said. But now it is anchored. To me, she whispered. He did not deny it. That means what? She pressed. That moments linger, he said. That absence hurts. That anticipation stretches. Her chest tightened painfully. That sounds human. It is adjacent, he replied. Nearer than intended. She stared at him, the weight of it settling in her bones, and heaven sees that as corruption. Deviation, he corrected. From design. She shook her head. Design doesn't account for this. Watcher's gaze flicked to her briefly, then back to the window. No, he said, it does not. Silence stretched, heavy and unresolved. Eliza took a careful breath. What about me? She asked. What does wanting cost me? Watcher turned then, fully facing her. His eyes held something fierce and searching. It cost you safety, he said. She nodded. I figured. It costs you the illusion that obedience guarantees comfort, he continued. A humorless laugh escaped her. I lost that years ago. Yes, he agreed, but now you cannot pretend it might return. She considered that. Anything else? It costs you certainty, he said, about who you are. Her throat tightened. And who am I becoming? Watcher's gaze softened. Someone who chooses with awareness. The words steadied her more than comfort ever had. She shifted her weight, the distance between them suddenly feeling heavier than any rule. So what happens now? She asked. Do we wait? Yes, he said, but not passively. Her pulse quickened. Then what? I must withdraw, he said quietly. The word hit her like a blow. Her breath stuttered. Withdraw how? From proximity, he said. From regular presence. Her chest ached. Because of me. No, he said firmly. Because of heaven. She pressed her lips together, fighting the urge to argue. For how long? He hesitated. The pause was answer enough. She swallowed hard. You're leaving. Yes. The finality of it settled over her like winter. Watcher continued, voice steady but weighted. If I remain near you as I am now, the accumulation will accelerate. And then, she whispered, then the choice will be taken from both of us, he said. I will fall, or be removed entirely. Her hands trembled. You're asking me to let you go. I am asking you to release me, he replied. The word release cut deeper than leave ever could. Eliza's chest tightened painfully. That's not fair. No, he agreed, but it is necessary. She turned away, pacing the length of the room, tears stinging her eyes. You said wanting doesn't entitle, she said. You said restraint matters. I did everything you asked. Yes, he said softly. That is why I am asking this now. She stopped, turning back to him. Because I proved I could endure. Yes, and now endurance means loss. Yes, he said again. The simplicity of it broke something in her. She laughed, brittle and aching. So this is the cost. I learn how to want honestly, and the reward is absence. Watcher's gaze sharpened. Not absence, he said. Space. She shook her head. That feels like semantics. Space preserves what absence destroys, he replied. She folded her arms tighter. You make it sound noble. It is not, he said quietly. It is painful. The admission softened something in her chest. She walked back toward him, stopping at the careful distance they had learned to hold. If I ask you to stay, she said, voice trembling, would you? Watcher did not hesitate. Yes. The word hit her like fire. And that would be wrong. Yes, he said. Her breath came shallow. Then I won't ask. Something like relief and grief flickered through his gaze. Thank you, he said softly. She shook her head. Don't thank me. I'm furious. He inclined his head. As you should be. They stood in silence, the space between them charged with everything they were choosing not to do. Eliza, Watcher said at last, there is something else. Her stomach sank. Of course there is. If I withdraw, he said, you must not fill the space with fantasy. She stiffened. You don't trust me. I trust you, he said. I do not trust longing unattended. She considered that, then nodded. Fair. You must let the wanting remain unfulfilled, he continued. Unresolved. Her chest tightened. That sounds unbearable. It is not meant to be easy, he said. It is meant to be honest. She closed her eyes briefly, bracing herself. And if I fail? Watcher's voice dropped. Then you invite me back in a way I cannot refuse. Her eyes flew open. You mean, yes, he said. Even absence is a boundary. The truth of it settled over her like a weight. She nodded slowly. Then tell me how to do this, she said. Tell me how to let you go without pretending you didn't matter. Watcher's gaze softened, something tender flickering there. Remember correctly, he said. Do not minimize. Do not romanticize. Name what was and what is. She swallowed. And what is? He met her eyes. Longing that has not been resolved into action. Her breath caught. That sounds like torture. He shook his head. It sounds like formation. The word echoed in her mind. Formation. She glanced down at the Bible still clutched in her hand. Is there a verse for this? She asked quietly. Watcher's lips curved faintly. There is always a verse. She opened the book again, hands trembling slightly. Her eyes found the passage without effort. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. Psalm 126, vers 5. She laughed softly, tears slipping free despite her effort. That feels optimistic. It is patient, he replied. She closed the book and wiped her eyes. When will you go? Watcher turned his gaze toward the window. The sun was fully risen now, light flooding the room. Soon, he said. Her chest ached. Will you come back? His silence was answer enough. She stepped back, giving him space, even as every part of her wanted to close the distance. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Watcher inclined his head, reverent. You have chosen well. She scoffed softly. It doesn't feel like it. No, he agreed. But it will shape you. The air around him began to thin, his presence lightening, not fading yet, but loosening, like a grip slowly releasing. Eliza, he said, voice steady but urgent. There will be a moment when heaven asks again. Her heart skipped. Asks what? If you wish me returned, he said. And the way you answer then will matter more than anything before. Her breath hitched. When? He met her gaze, something fierce and sorrowful mingling there. When the wanting hurts enough to feel like certainty, he said. The room grew quiet, the ordinary world pressing back in around them. Watcher stepped back, then further, his outline softening in the light. Eliza, he said one last time, do not confuse relief with obedience. She nodded, tears streaming freely now. And you, she said, voice breaking, don't confuse obedience with absence. Something like a smile touched his lips. Then he was gone. The room felt suddenly too large, too empty. Eliza sank onto the sofa, clutching the Bible to her chest, breath coming in ragged pulls. Outside, life went on, cars passing, a bird calling from the oak tree, the world indifferent to her reckoning. Inside her, longing burned, unresolved, unquieted, alive. She closed her eyes, the words echoing in her mind, estimate the cost. She had, and she had chosen. But as the ache settled deeper, a terrible, unavoidable question surfaced, one that heaven itself would soon demand an answer to. How long could she endure wanting before she asked to be relieved? Chapter 11. When Heaven Withholds. Absence was not quiet. Eliza learned that within the first hour. She woke with the expectation of attention, of that subtle gathering of the air, the pressure that had become familiar enough to feel like company. Instead, the room lay flat and ordinary around her. No listening, no nearness, just the hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the distant sound of a car passing on the street. She lay still, eyes open, waiting for the ache to announce itself. It did. It arrived not as panic, but as weight, a steady, settled heaviness behind her ribs, like something essential had been removed and her body was still adjusting to the imbalance. She pressed her palm to her chest and breathed through it, counting slowly the way she had learned to do during the worst months of the divorce. 1, she whispered. 2, 3. The ache did not recede. She sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cold. The room looked exactly the same as it had every other morning of her adult life. That, she realized, was the cruelty of it. Nothing external marked the loss. You said space, she murmured, her voice rough. This feels like abandonment. The room did not answer. Eliza dressed slowly, deliberately choosing clothes that felt solid, denim, cotton, weight. She braided her hair back, tugging just enough to feel grounded in her body. In the bathroom mirror, her reflection looked unchanged, older than she used to be, tired, awake in a way she hadn't been before. You asked for this, she told herself. You chose it. The words tasted like resolve and accusation all at once. In the kitchen, she moved through routine on muscle memory alone. Coffee brewed, toast browned, the kettle whistled, then went silent. Ordinary sounds filled the space where attention had once gathered. She waited anyway. By mid-morning, the waiting had become its own discipline. Eliza sat at the table with her Bible open in front of her, hands folded, eyes fixed on the page without reading. Prayer felt dangerous now, not because heaven might answer, but because it might not. Watcher had warned her, do not confuse relief with obedience. She had not felt relief, only distance. She closed her eyes and drew a slow breath. God, she said, the word careful on her tongue. I'm still here. Silence. She waited, the ache sharpening slightly, like a muscle held too long in tension. The wanting pressed at her, not frantic, not indulgent, just present, unresolved, honest. I'm not asking for him back, she continued quietly. I'm asking, what now? The silence held. Eliza opened her eyes, frustration prickling under her skin. If endurance is the point, she said, voice tightening, then tell me what I'm enduring for. Nothing answered. She snapped the Bible shut, the sound sharper than she intended. Immediately guilt flared, old reflex, familiar and unhelpful. I'm not angry, she muttered. I'm just... She stopped. Just what? Lonely? She had been lonely before. Starved? Yes, but not in the same way. This hunger was specific, shaped. It had learned a name and then been asked to live without it. Eliza pushed back from the table and stood, pacing the length of the kitchen. Outside, sunlight spilled across the backyard, illuminating the bare oak branches like bones. Life, apparently, was proceeding as scheduled. By afternoon, absence had texture. It thickened during quiet moments, pressed hardest when she forgot herself, when she reached for a thought, a question, a half-formed prayer and expected it to be received. Each time the realization landed anew, there was no one standing near the threshold anymore. Watcher was gone. She spent the afternoon cleaning with unnecessary intensity, counters scrubbed until they shone, laundry folded with precise edges, drawers reorganized that did not need it. The physicality helped, grounding her in effort and completion, but longing was not impressed by productivity. It followed her from room to room, not demanding, not seductive, just there, a steady awareness of what had been removed. By evening, exhaustion settled into her bones. Eliza sat on the sofa as dusk gathered, the same place she had stood when heaven first turned its attention fully toward her. The memory of light, of judgment, of measured restraint flickered through her mind unbidden. You said you'd ask again, she whispered into the empty room. You said heaven would. Her voice wavered. I'm still choosing restraint. The silence did not argue. She reached for her Bible again, more out of habit than hope. It opened easily, pages whispering. Her eyes landed on a familiar verse, one she had underlined years ago without really understanding why. My God, why have you forsaken me? Psalm 22 verse 1. Her breath caught. Well, she murmured hoarsely, at least I'm in good company. She stared at the words, letting them sit without explanation. The psalm did not rush to resolve the question, it let the cry stand. So this is endurance, she whispered, staying without answers. She closed the book and leaned back, staring at the ceiling as darkness thickened around the edges of the room. The ache sharpened, not into temptation, but into something more dangerous, certainty. A conviction began to form, quiet and persistent, that if she asked, Watcher would return. The thought slid into place with unsettling ease. If you need me enough, his voice seemed to echo in memory, you will invite me back in a way I cannot refuse. Eliza's pulse quickened. No, she said aloud, sitting up straighter. That's not what this is. But the thought lingered. By nightfall, the absence had become unbearable, not because she wanted relief, but because she wanted meaning. Endurance without purpose felt like punishment, not formation. Eliza rose and returned to her bedroom, kneeling on the rug where she had prayed the night before. The fibers bit into her knees, grounding and sharp. Okay, she whispered, okay. She folded her hands loosely, refusing the instinct to clench. You said you'd ask again, she said into the dark. If this is the moment, I'm listening. The air did not shift. She swallowed, heart pounding. I won't pretend I don't want him, she continued, and I won't pretend that wanting him hasn't changed me. Her voice steadied as she spoke. "But I'm not asking for relief. I'm asking for truth." Silence stretched. Then, slowly, unmistakably, the air gathered. Not like Watcher's presence. Colder, broader, impersonal. Eliza's breath caught. The shadows in the room deepened, drawing inward as if pulled by gravity. The space at the foot of the bed grew dense, the way air thickens before a storm. Her heart hammered. "This isn't fair," she whispered automatically. The response came without sound, without voice, known rather than heard. "Fairness is not the measure." Eliza closed her eyes, bracing herself. "Then what is?" "Truth." The word settled into her bones. The pressure increased, not crushing, but inescapable. She became acutely aware of her own body, of the steady beat of her heart, of the wanting that lived there without apology. "You endure," the presence pressed. "Now you will be asked." Her throat tightened. "Asked what?" The pressure focused, narrowed, until it rested squarely on her chest, over her heart. "Do you wish what has been withdrawn to be returned?" The question landed cleanly, without embellishment. Eliza's breath stuttered. This was it. No metaphors, no demonstrations, no ambiguity. Heaven was not asking her to endure anymore. It was asking her to choose. Her mind raced, images flashing through her. Watcher's restraint, his weight, the way time had begun to gather around him. The cost he had named, the fall he had feared. "If I say yes," she whispered, voice trembling, "you'll bring him back." "Yes." "And if I say no?" "Endurance will continue." Her hands trembled. "You're asking me to decide his fate." "We are asking you to reveal your intent." The distinction felt thin as glass. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and unashamed. "You know I want him," she said. "You know how much." "Wanting has been measured." Her chest tightened painfully. "Then what are you testing now?" The presence pressed closer, attention absolute. Whether your obedience is contingent on hope, the truth of it struck hard. Eliza bowed her head, breathing ragged. She thought of every time she had obeyed because she believed it would lead somewhere safe. Every prayer shaped by expectation of reward. This was different. If she asked for Watcher back, it would not be because she believed heaven approved, but because she wanted relief, certainty, an end to the ache. And if she refused, her breath caught. If she refused, the wanting would remain unresolved, unredeemed, alive. "Eliza," the presence pressed, not unkindly. "Answer." She lifted her head, tears streaking her face, resolve and grief tangling in her chest. "I won't ask for him back," she said, voice breaking but clear. "Not like this." The pressure held, waiting. "I won't bind him because I'm hurting," she continued. "I won't turn longing into leverage." Silence stretched, longer this time. Then the presence eased, just slightly. "Your answer has been heard." Her chest ached. "Is that it?" "No." Her heart lurched. "Then what?" The air in the room shifted again, not heavier but sharper, as if a decision had been set into motion. "Heaven will now ask him." The words landed like a blow. Eliza's breath left her in a rush. "You're still giving him a choice?" "Yes." "And if he chooses to return?" The presence did not answer immediately. When it did, the response was absolute. "Then he will not return as he was." The meaning settled with terrible clarity. Eliza pressed her forehead to the floor, body shaking with quiet sobs. "Then please," she whispered, not bargaining now, just pleading, "let him choose freely." The pressure receded, drawing back like a tide. "That," the presence replied, "is beyond your keeping." The air thinned, the shadows loosened, the room returned to itself, leaving Eliza kneeling alone in the quiet dark. She remained there long after the presence withdrew, breath slowing, body aching, heart steady in its resolve. Heaven had withheld comfort, she had withheld permission, and somewhere beyond her sight, a question had turned, not toward her longing, but toward the one who bore wings and weight and the cost of wanting. Eliza rose slowly and crawled into bed, exhaustion dragging at her limbs. As sleep finally crept in, one final thought surfaced, sharp and unavoidable. She had chosen endurance. Now heaven would test love. Chapter 12. The Invitation. He returned like a held breath finally released. Eliza felt it before she saw anything, the air in the room tightening, warming, becoming attentive in a way it had not been since heaven withdrew its question from her keeping. Her body reacted instinctively, breath catching, skin prickling with awareness she had learned not to chase but could no longer deny. She sat up slowly in bed, heart pounding. "Watcher?" she whispered. He stood near the foot of the bed, no longer keeping to shadow. Morning light touched him fully now, and for the first time since she had known him, it did not pass through without effect. It caught, on his shoulders, along the line of his jaw, in the depth of his eyes. He looked heavier somehow, as if gravity had learned his name. Different. "Good morning, Eliza," he said. No. Her throat tightened at the sound of her name on his lips. "You're here?" "Yes," he replied. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, suddenly acutely aware of herself. Barefoot, rumpled, unguarded. She pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders, not to hide, but to steady. "They asked you," she said quietly. Watcher nodded once. "They did." Her pulse thundered. "And?" He did not answer immediately. He took a single step closer, then stopped, careful, deliberate. The restraint in him felt different now, not effortless but chosen moment by moment. "Eliza," he said, voice low and reverent, "I need you to listen without interrupting." She nodded, fingers curling into the blanket. "Okay." "Heaven has issued an invitation," he continued, "not a command." Her breath caught. "An invitation to what?" "To remain," he said, "or to withdraw completely." The words landed heavily. "You already told me that," she said. "That was the choice." "No," he replied gently. "That was my choice. This is different." She frowned. "How?" Watcher's gaze held hers, something unguarded flickering there. "If I withdraw now, I will be reassigned beyond reach," he said. "Not absent, simply no longer near." "And if you remain?" she asked softly. "Then I do so without protection," he said. "Without assignment, without containment." Her heart lurched. "You fall." "Yes," he said. The word echoed between them, heavy and irreversible. Eliza stood slowly, closing the distance just enough to feel the heat of him, not touching, not inviting, just near. Her body reacted immediately, a low ache blooming beneath her ribs, but she held still. "You said heaven would ask you," she whispered. "Not me." "They have," he said, "but they have also named a condition." Her stomach tightened. "Of course they have." Watcher's lips curved faintly, not humor, but acknowledgement. "If I choose to remain," he said, "it will be because I am invited." The word struck her like lightning. "I won't," she said immediately. "I know," he replied. She shook her head, breath coming faster. "Don't put this on me." "I am not," he said quietly. "I am telling you the truth." She looked up at him, eyes burning. "You told me not to bind you with my longing." "And you did not," he said. "That restraint was witnessed." "Then why is this still happening?" she demanded. "Because restraint does not erase desire," he replied. "It reveals it." The ache in her chest sharpened. Watcher took another careful step closer, stopping just within the range that made her skin hum. He did not reach for her. He did not need to. "Eliza," he said softly, "heaven has given me one final allowance." She swallowed hard. "What allowance?" "To be invited," he said, "or refused." Her pulse roared in her ears. "You're asking me to choose your fall." "No," he said firmly. "I am asking you to choose your truth." She laughed softly, broken. "Those feel like the same thing." "They are not," he replied. "One binds, one releases." She pressed her palm flat against her chest, grounding herself in the steady beat of her heart. "If I invite you," she said slowly, "you stay." "Yes." "And you fall." "Yes." "And if I don't?" "I withdraw," he said, "and remain what I was." The word was cut deep. Eliza closed her eyes, breathing through the ache. "You're changed already," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "Then isn't this already decided?" Watcher's gaze sharpened. "No," he said. "Change is not the same as surrender." She opened her eyes again. "What would falling mean for you?" she asked. "Not in doctrine. In truth." Watcher hesitated. When he spoke, his voice was lower, stripped of distance. "It would mean choosing time," he said. "Limitation, desire that cannot be resolved by obedience alone." Her breath hitched. "It would mean being known not as function but as self," he continued. "It would mean loss of clarity and gain of consequence." She stared at him. "That sounds like becoming human." "Adjacent," he said again, "near enough to ache." The longing in her chest surged, sharp and dangerous. "And you want that?" she whispered. Watcher's gaze dropped to the space between them, then lifted again. "I want you," he said quietly, "and that is precisely why this must be named carefully." The honesty of it nearly undid her. Eliza took a step back, forcing distance where her body begged for closeness. "I won't be the one who asks you to fall," she said, voice trembling but firm. Watcher nodded slowly. "I know." She laughed bitterly. "Then why are you still here?" "Because there is one more part of the invitation," he said. Her heart sank. "There's always one more part." "If I am invited," he said, "it must be without promise." She frowned. "Without promise of what?" "Of return," he replied. "Of permanence. Of completion." Her chest tightened. "That sounds cruel." "It is mercy," he said. "It prevents illusion." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "This isn't how love works." "No," he agreed, "but it is how freedom does." Silence stretched, heavy and trembling. Eliza turned away, pacing the length of the room, hands clenched at her sides. "You said heaven would ask you," she said. "Not me." "They have," he replied. "They asked whether I would return without invitation." "And you said?" she demanded. Watcher's voice was steady. "I said no." She stopped short, spinning back to face him. "You what?" "I will not return unless I am asked," he said. "Not because I need permission, but because I will not steal choice." Her breath caught painfully. "That's insane." "It is love's logic," he replied. The phrase echoed something he had said before, now sharper with consequence. Eliza pressed her knuckles to her lips, fighting tears. "You're putting me in an impossible position." "No," he said gently. "I am honoring your agency." She laughed through tears. "That's not comforting." "I know," he said. She sank onto the edge of the bed, shoulders slumping. "What does heaven want?" she asked quietly. Watcher's gaze softened. "Heaven wants order." "And what do you want?" He did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I want to choose." The room felt suddenly too small. Eliza lifted her eyes to him, heart aching with the weight of it. "Then choose," she said. "Choose obedience." Watcher stepped closer, closer than he had allowed himself since judgment entered their lives. He stopped just short of contact, the space between them humming with restrained electricity. "I can," he said softly, "and I will, if you release me." The word release rang again, heavier now. "And if I don't?" she whispered. "Then I will remain," he said, "and fall." The invitation hung between them, bright, terrible, alive. Eliza's chest heaved. "I don't want to lose you." Watcher's gaze was fierce and tender all at once. "Then do not bind me." She shook her head slowly, realization dawning. "You're asking me to love you without keeping you." "Yes," he said. The truth of it pierced her. She reached for her Bible with trembling hands, needing anchor before she shattered. It opened easily, as if waiting. Her eyes fell on the verse immediately. Though he was in the form of God, he did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped. Philippians 2:6-7. Her breath caught. "He let go," she whispered. "Yes," Watcher said, and was changed. She closed the book gently, pressing her palm against it. "You're asking me to do the same." He nodded once. Tears spilled freely now, unashamed. Eliza stood again, wiping her face, her posture straightening with quiet resolve. "I won't invite you," she said, voice breaking but clear. "Not because I don't want you, but because I refuse to make your fall the proof of my desire." Watcher closed his eyes briefly, something like relief and grief passing over his face. "And I won't pretend that means I don't love you," she continued. "It means I love you enough to let you go." The words settled into the room like a vow. Watcher opened his eyes. The restraint in him burned bright, painful, beautiful, chosen. "Eliza," he said softly, "if I withdraw now—" "I know," she whispered. "You may not return." Silence stretched. Then Watcher took a step back. The air shifted, not abruptly, but decisively. "Eliza," he said, his voice steady despite the strain, "there is one thing left unspoken." Her heart hammered. "What?" "If heaven asks me again," he said, "and I am given freedom to choose, I will choose love." Her breath caught. "But not tonight," he finished, "not without your invitation." The room seemed to exhale. Watcher stepped back again, his presence thinning, light loosening around his edges. "Eliza," he said one last time, voice reverent, "you have chosen release." Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Go," she whispered. Watcher held her gaze for a long, devastating moment, then inclined his head. The light around him brightened, then softened, and he was gone. The room felt suddenly too quiet, too empty, as if something essential had been lifted out of it. Eliza sank onto the bed, sobbing quietly into her hands, the weight of her choice pressing deep into her bones. She had not invited him. She had not bound him. She had let him go. Outside, the day moved forward without pause. Inside, her longing remained, unresolved, unredeemed, alive. And somewhere beyond her sight, heaven prepared to ask again, not for permission, but for surrender. Chapter 13. The Fall. The night did not announce him. Eliza woke with the sensation of being held between breaths, awake enough to feel the room, not awake enough to name why her heart was already racing. The darkness was deep and unremarkable, the kind that usually meant sleep would take her again in moments. But the air had weight. She sat up slowly, hand pressed to her chest, listening. The house was still, no footsteps, no gathering of pressure the way it used to come when Watcher stood near. And yet, Eliza. Her name arrived without sound, not spoken into the room but into the place behind her sternum where longing had lived and refused to die. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, pulse pounding. "No," she whispered, "I didn't—" "I know," he said. The space near the window brightened, not with light, but with presence. Watcher stood there, unmistakable and changed. The containment that once wrapped him so carefully was gone. Not unraveled, released. He looked heavier now, more solid, as if gravity had claimed him without permission. "You shouldn't be here," she breathed. "I am," he replied. Her chest tightened. "I didn't invite you." "No," he said softly. "You did not." Fear flickered through her. sharp and immediate. Then why? Because heaven asked me again, he said, and this time the asking was not conditional. The words settled like frost. Eliza's breath came shallow. They let you choose. Yes. And you? Her voice broke. You chose this? Watcher met her gaze, something fierce and irrevocable burning there. I chose love. The word did not sound triumphant. It sounded costly. Eliza's knees trembled. She sat back on the edge of the bed, grounding herself in the press of the mattress. You said you wouldn't return without invitation. I said I would not steal choice, he replied. This does not steal yours. She shook her head, struggling to understand. Then what is this? It is consequence, he said. Not of your longing, but of mine. The room seemed to lean inward, attentive and hushed, as if even the walls understood something final had been set into motion. What does falling mean now? She asked quietly. Watcher took a step closer, then stopped, the restraint in him still present but strained, like a vow held at the edge of breaking. It means I am no longer assigned, he said, no longer contained. It means time will take me fully. Her breath hitched. And heaven? His gaze lifted briefly, as if acknowledging something vast and distant. Heaven does not turn away, he said. It releases. The truth of it landed heavy and strange. Eliza rose slowly, standing a careful distance from him. Her body reacted immediately, heat blooming, awareness sharpening, but she held herself still, honoring the discipline that had shaped them both. You didn't have to do this, she whispered. Yes, he said. I did. Tears blurred her vision. Because of me. Because of truth, he corrected gently, because I could no longer pretend that obedience was neutral. The ache in her chest swelled, painful and bright. And now? Now, he said, voice low. I must leave again. Panic flared. What? Not yet, he added quickly, but soon. This, he gestured subtly to the space between them, is not permanence, it is passage. Eliza swallowed hard. Then why come at all? Watcher's gaze softened, something unbearably tender flickering there. Because love that chooses must be witnessed, he said, and because you deserve to know you were not wrong. The words undid her. She stepped closer before she could stop herself, stopping just shy of contact. The air between them hummed, alive and dangerous. Her breath came shallow, her body aching with awareness she did not try to suppress, but did not act upon. Watcher's breath hitched. Eliza, he said, voice strained, if you move closer. I know, she whispered. I'm staying here. They stood in that narrow space, close enough to feel heat, far enough to keep choice intact. The intimacy of it was overwhelming, more intense than touch would have been. I need you to understand something, Watcher said quietly. This fall is not consummation. Her throat tightened. Then what is it? It is consent, he replied, to limitation, to desire that cannot be resolved by command. She nodded slowly. That sounds unbearable. It is, he said, and I choose it. The room seemed to hold its breath. Eliza lifted her hand, not to touch him, but to steady herself. She pressed her palm to her own chest, grounding in the familiar rhythm of her heart. I won't take advantage of this, she said firmly. I won't make this easier for myself by pretending it's mine to finish. Watcher's eyes closed briefly, relief and grief crossing his face. Thank you. Silence stretched between them, thick, reverent, devastating. Then Watcher reached up slowly, deliberately, and placed his hand over his own heart, mirroring her gesture. This is as far as I can come, he said, and as close as I will be. The intimacy of the mirror undid her. Tears spilled freely, unchecked. I love you, she said. The words landed without heat, without urgency, true and quiet. Watcher opened his eyes. The restraint in him broke, not into action, but into being. The light around him shifted, dimming, warming, settling into something wholly human in its fragility. "I know," he replied, "and I love you." The admission rang through the room like a bell struck deep and true. The air changed then, not tightening, not judging, releasing. Eliza felt it like a loosening in her bones, a grief that finally found permission to exist. Watcher staggered slightly, a sharp intake of breath tearing from his chest. "Eliza," he said urgently, "I have to go." Her heart lurched. "Now?" "Yes." She stepped back instinctively, giving him space even as every part of her screamed to close the distance. Watcher's outline flickered, not vanishing but thinning, as if the world were gently but firmly letting him go. "This will hurt," he said, "for both of us." She nodded, tears streaming. "I know, but it will not be wasted," he continued. "Longing rarely is." The room grew brighter, not with light, but with release. Eliza felt the presence that had once pressed so hard now recede, not cold, not cruel, simply complete. Watcher took one last look at her, gaze fierce and tender. "Eliza," he said softly, "you were never wrong to want." Then he was gone. Not withdrawn, not reassigned. Gone. The room fell silent, the ordinary sounds of night returning like a tide. Eliza stood frozen for a long moment, heart pounding, chest aching with a grief so sharp it felt holy. She sank onto the bed, clutching the blanket to her chest, sobbing quietly into the dark. There had been no touch, no fulfillment, only choice, and consequence, and love that refused to pretend it was small. Hours later, exhaustion finally claimed her. When Eliza woke, the morning light was pale and indifferent. The room was empty, no warmth, no weight, no attention. She sat up slowly, heart racing, searching the space where he had stood. Nothing. The ache settled deep and steady, unresolved and alive. She pressed her palm to her chest, breathing through it, and whispered into the quiet, "Stay." Nothing answered. Eliza bowed her head, tears slipping free, not in despair, but in reverence. He had chosen, and now she realized with a terrible dawning clarity, so must she. Chapter 14. Sacred Longing. Morning did not explain itself. Light came as it always had, thin gold through the blinds, dust rising where it touched the floor, the house resuming its quiet agreements with time. Eliza lay still, listening to the ordinary sounds return to their places. A bird called from the oak. A car passed. The world did not pause for revelation. She breathed. The ache was still there. Not sharp now, not frantic. It had settled into something steady, like a second pulse beneath her own. Longing remained, unresolved, unredeemed by outcome, but it no longer felt like accusation. It felt like presence remembered. She sat up slowly and pressed her feet to the floor. The room was empty in the way it had been empty before Watcher ever came, yet altered, as if the walls themselves had learned something and could not forget it. "Eliza," she whispered to herself, grounding. Naming mattered. She stood and moved through her morning without hurry. Coffee brewed, water ran, the mirror reflected a woman who looked the same and yet did not. There was a steadiness in her eyes she had not known how to grow on her own. In the living room, her Bible still rested on the chair where it had been left open and closed and opened again so many times. She picked it up with care, as if it were no longer merely an object, but a witness that had chosen to remain. She sat and opened it, not asking now, not bracing for response, just listening. Her eyes found the verse as if guided. "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." Matthew 5:6. Eliza smiled faintly, a soft exhale leaving her chest. "Filled," she murmured. "Not satisfied." The distinction mattered. She closed the book and held it against her chest, letting the truth settle. Fulfillment was not the same as possession. Fullness did not require relief. Hunger could remain holy without being indulged. She had wanted heaven to take the longing from her. Instead, heaven had taught her how to carry it. The realization did not erase the ache, but it sanctified it. She stood and crossed to the window. Outside, the oak tree lifted its bare branches toward the sky, patient and unashamed of its waiting. Eliza rested her palm against the glass, breathing in the quiet companionship of the world continuing. "You were right," she whispered, not to Watcher, not exactly, but to the truth he had named. Longing isn't the enemy. Memory stirred, not of his presence now, but of his choosing, of the way he had loved without taking, fallen without binding, spoken truth without demanding it be answered in kind. Tears rose, not hot, not desperate, clean. She let them fall. Grief did not contradict faith, it completed it. Later, she went for a walk. The neighborhood greeted her with its usual indifference, lawns trimmed too neatly, mailboxes bearing names she half recognized, a woman pushing a stroller with practiced ease. Life was ordinary, and that, she realized, was the grace of it. At the corner, she paused, breath catching as a thought surfaced. Quiet, unbidden, unmistakable. "You were never wrong to want." She stopped walking. The words were not spoken. They did not arrive with pressure or command or scrutiny. They rested gently, like something set down rather than imposed. Eliza closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. To heaven, perhaps, or to the God who had watched her choose without intervening, who had seen love refuse to coerce, obedience refuse to bargain. She turned back toward home, steps unhurried. In the days that followed, longing came and went like weather. Some mornings it pressed heavy, the absence sharp enough to steal her breath. Other days it felt distant. A low hum beneath joy she had not expected to find again, laughter with a friend, the warmth of sunlight on her shoulders, the satisfaction of doing work that mattered without being seen. She did not rush to resolve it. She let it teach her. Prayer returned, not as plea, not as danger, as presence. She learned to kneel without asking for relief, to speak without rehearsing outcome. Sometimes she said nothing at all and let the silence hold. One evening, weeks later, she lit a candle at her kitchen table, not for ritual, not for memory, just because the light pleased her. As the flame steadied, something shifted, not in the room, not in the air, but in her awareness. A gentleness brushed the edge of her attention, so faint she might have dismissed it if she had not learned the difference between imagination and recognition. Not watcher, not presence, witness. Eliza's breath slowed. The candle flame leaned, then straightened. She smiled, not in surprise, not in fear. "So," she said softly, "you saw." The quiet did not answer with words. It did not need to. She reached for her Bible one last time that evening and turned to a passage she had never lingered on before. "For now we see through a glass, darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." 1 Corinthians 13:12. Eliza closed the book gently. "Fully known," she whispered, "even in wanting." She blew out the candle and stood in the dark, unafraid. Love had not been given to her as possession. Faith had not been rewarded with comfort. Longing had not been erased, but it had been seen. And that, she understood now, was enough. She went to bed without asking heaven to stay, without asking anything at all. Sleep found her easily, the ache resting where it belonged, inside a woman who had learned that holiness was not the absence of desire, but the courage to hold it without letting it rule. Outside, the oak tree stood patient beneath the stars, and somewhere beyond her knowing, not near, not far, but attentive in the way eternity always is, heaven did not turn away.